that's why there's all the traffic. When I came down the hill on Montgomery Street. Well,
Thank you. Oh, wait a minute.
So,
They were supposed to change
Linda.
your chair.
well, let's see. Now,
No, that's
I thought they did.
I'm gonna bring one from the
It's fine, I understand.
I think she's coming here together with Krista.
She is, but she's trying to run the meeting.
That's awesome.
Light 3. Agency housing 2. Chili's 1. Golf course. Camping.
Returning from closed session, direction given, no action taken. We're moving into the goal-setting workshop. Bill?
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor and Council. I'm Bill LeGrone. I'm your facilitator today. I've taken an hour off so I can bill the city for $1,000 for this because I don't know what I'm doing. So I'm just kidding. Anybody watching, I'm not billing the city $1,000. What we're here today is just to try to accomplish a set of goals for our council and for our city to move forward with. Approximately a little over a week ago, maybe 2 weeks ago at this point, I sent out an email asking the council for their top 5 priorities. What I have listed on the large post-it boards next to me are those priorities. I'm going to go through each one just real quickly just to cover what they are. The number one priority that seemed to come in from the at least 3 council members was our roads. I mean, there was many different things that they identified with the roads that need to be done. Some talked about a plan for road rehabilitation. Some council members talked about road repair, that they just need to be repaired. Others were talking about traffic flow improvement and road repair. So that was kind of the general overreaching request on that goal. The second goal that we got in common was housing. Many different ways of looking at it. Some of the requests were for housing to consider incentives to build and developers to stimulate the housing market. One housing interest was making more moderate and mid-level housing available that will cause a ripple up effect where lower end houses would become available by people who could afford more expensive houses moving into those. So that was one of the interests that were involved in that. The other interest was affordable housing was also mentioned as one of the necessities for our city. So we had quite a bit of common interest in that. So that was a very common goal with the council. With those, the next one was blight. We had 3 council members that were concerned about the blight and the condition of the city. The blight is, we're talking about dilapidated properties, we're talking about dilapidated infrastructure. We could be talking about anything like a sidewalk that is pushed up because of roots that are coming up underneath it. We're talking about faded roadway lines. We're talking about anything that will constitute blight in the city that makes the city overall unappealing. It could even be something as simple as one council person pointed out, is the weeds that are growing in our gutters. It's a message that you send when people drive up, when they look at your building. It's an impression that you give when you have something like that going on. So that was the one that we had 3 council people that were interested in doing something about blight. So with those 3, after going through all of them, and those were the ones that I had where we had 3, I took those 3 and I put those over here on this board. And these don't represent anything. These are not my goals. These are your goals. So if at any point you want to jump in, change anything or anything like that, I just took these 3, put them up as our number 3, our top 3. The other one that is over here that is actually on this board over here is staffing and hiring and training. 3 council people thought that it was a necessity to get the city properly staffed, but also not only staff, but invest in that staff through proper training, through conferences, just different training activities for them. There was...
Chief, can I interrupt you, please?
Yes, ma'am.
For the top 3, you have roads, and there were only 3 council people that weighed in, correct?
There was 3 that supported that goal.
And then you have blight, and how many weighed in? Is that being one of the priorities or council goals?
3 weighed in on blight. So the one that I'm missing up there behind me right now is housing. Housing should be your number 1 goal because it had 4 council people that were interested in doing something like that. And that changed, I'm sorry, from the time that I prepared this to this time right now.
So how did we distinguish between putting roads on the top 3 and not blight as well? I just want to know what your thought process.
Blight at the time that this was prepared only had 2 council people that were interested in it. After I prepared this, prior to this meeting, as council people arrived, a council person requested to add their interest to blight as well, so they were added to there. So at the time when this was prepared, there was only 2 votes here for blight, and it has since changed. There was,
and until it wasn't, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, when I first came into this meeting, roads only had 2, and I was the 3rd council member on that at approximately 3:30.
No, there's 3 council people that have roads identified on the paperwork.
All right.
So if you are wanting to throw your support behind roads, that would take roads up to 4, which we could fix real easily. And all of this is fluid. So if there's anything we want to change, or if you've rethought something, certainly these are your goals.
Right.
And so please feel free to change them. I'm not married to any of this.
I just wanted, I'm a stickler for clarity. Thank you.
Right. So this is going to require a little bit of change over here as we go, as these goals change. But as it was at the time, with what was presented to me at the time, these were your top 3 goals, and there was some other space in there so that we could change those. As we work down our list, let's just cover the ones that are on here now. There was 2 council people that were interested in emergency housing. That would be something similar to the Oroville Rescue Mission, sheltering. I know the Haven of Hope is interested in opening up a wet shelter. I think that's the direction that we were headed with that emergency type of sheltering and housing in the city. We have a limited amount of that. We've had a little bit of a setback with the Oroville Rescue Mission expansion of their wet shelter because of the funding that they were counting on they didn't receive. I think the Haven of Hope was also anticipating some funding that they didn't receive. So that was a concern for a couple of our council folks. Our number 5, and these are in no particular order, they're just the order in which I chose to put them in. Water options. One of our council people is very interested in looking at different water options for the people that live in the Cal Water area. They feel that the rates are exorbitant and they want to see what we can do about that. What options do we have? That's a priority for a council person. Number 6 is the golf course and camping. That requires a little bit of explanation. What we're talking about with that is doing an expansion at the golf course that would include a camping area. So if an individual was on some sort of a trip where they were traveling long distance by air, they could fly into the Oroville airport, spend the night camping, rest and recover from the day, and then fuel up and continue on their trip. Or the Oroville airport could become a destination where a golfer could come, spend the day playing golf, enjoy the amenities of the city, and then camp overnight and then return to wherever it is that they're going. So what the idea would be to improve the taxiway that goes over to the golf course, because there is an actual area out there where you can park your planes, and then put in out there on that airport land several camping sites so that people that fly in can use those. And I don't think you'd necessarily have to fly in to use those. I think it would be available to anybody who wanted to come up and camp and golf. I don't know how common that is, but it is something that one of our council members was interested in exploring. On this board over here, this is just a continuation. Two of our council members were interested in the expansion of public safety. Now, that public safety that they were talking about was not public safety like what you would traditionally think. They were talking about specifically park rangers, having somebody in the park, making them more accessible, more usable. There was also some talk about safer streets and things like that. So that would include some of your traditional law enforcement activities. And there was also talk of dealing more aggressively with the homeless that are causing us issues in our parks. So that's what they were talking about there. Now, I would caution the council, and this won't make me popular with my people, but you are already at a dangerous tipping point with your funding levels for public safety. You are at 68% now of your budget is expended for public safety. Cities that have failed, and typically I'm specifically talking about Vacaville and I think it was Vacaville or Vallejo, whichever one went bankrupt, San Bernardino, and also, what was the other one? Stockton. Was it Vallejo?
Did you
And
say
Stockton.
Vallejo?
I believe it's Vallejo and
It's
Stockton.
Vallejo.
Yeah.
They went over 70% with their public safety. And when you do that, you topple your organization because it is so expensive. So we have to be really careful of what we do with that. Now, there is going to be room in your budget because of anticipated growth in that revenue from the Measure U funding. So there is some room in there, but you have to be careful to not go really heavy on that, overinvest in that, and cause yourself some significant problems down the road. So not against them, just want to make sure that we keep that in mind as we move forward. Code enforcement was a popular one that came up with a couple council people. And what I believe is that code enforcement and blight are probably the same thing. We're just talking about it from different ways arriving there. But code enforcement by a couple of council people was an important direction that they would like to go. An interesting one is business development. That is talking about probably something similar, which it's a different way of saying it, but it's the same thing. We're kind of back to housing. And what I mean by that is specifically the things that were talked about is streamlining permit processing, promoting positive relationships, working together, easing up on the fees, and removing some altogether, creating jobs, and reducing tax burden. So I think that it's kind of related to that. I mean, so it's kind of the same thing, but not really. But I felt it was important enough that we keep it out there and keep it by itself. Fiscal responsibility was also important to two council members. What they were specifically talking about was making the city prosperous for our next generation, making sure we pay our debts off that we can pay off, and also making it more of a business-friendly environment for folks that come in and want to do business with the city. The next one we have up here is our staffing, hiring, and training. That is hiring the staff to do the job that you want to do, that you're asking them to do, making sure that you're properly staffed, adequately staffed, and that when folks come in that they can get the staff, get the attention that they need, want, deserve, and desire. Three of our council people thought that was a priority of the city. City image is also came up a couple different times. That goes back to the weeds in the gutter, the weeds on the building, just the general overall look of the city. I mean, when somebody comes in and your lobby is a mess, and quite honestly, you've all been through the lobby, our lobby's a mess. It needs updating. It needs to have a more of a professional, modern look to it. I mean, it's what we can afford. It's what we have. I'm not suggesting that you gut the place out and make a Taj Mahal or anything like that. I am suggesting, though, that you put the molding back on the floor that needs to be there. You fix the holes in the wall, and we have a reasonably professional-looking facility when you walk through the front door, because people make evaluations and assessments of you immediately, and if you look like a rube, they're going to treat you like a rube. So you should. And I'm sorry if that offends anybody. I'm not really sure what that word means. I just mean unprofessional, not real smart is what I mean by that. That's all I mean. If I offended any rubes out there, I apologize. If it was anything more than what I thought, I'm sorry.
So Chief, I have a question in regards to the city image. Is that specifically, was that just an example, or is it just throughout the city with, just wanting a facelift in the city, a makeover?
I think
From the time you get off the freeway to look at what you're looking at,
I think you're absolutely correct, because I've made this comment myself before. If I was Bill Gates and I'm driving through Oroville and I'm looking for a place to start a factory and I pull off the highway and the first thing I see or some of the things I see, I'm going to get back on the highway and keep going.
Absolutely.
I mean, so, I think it is. It is about a bigger statement about the overall image of the city, and it's something that, we need to have as a goal and a priority. Fire safety, that was not the typical what you're thinking. It's not like, we got to get, 4 more fire engines and things like that. What the council person that brought that up was talking about was the urban-rural interface, the citywide defensible space plans and things like that, vegetation management, planting ordinances, things like that. That is very important. I mean, we just had a horrible example of how things can go horribly wrong last year, and we want to make sure that, we do everything that we can as we go into the future to make sure that we don't have that type of same horrible type of event here. So that is what the council person was talking about on that particular one. And then the last one is a collaborative council. One council person thought that one thing that we need to do is we need to find ways to work together, pushing the same direction in a more collaborative, cooperative manner. That is what their goal is, how they want to move into the future and what they would like to do. Something like that is going to require commitment from all of the council, probably some team building workshops and things like that. I think what I learned from this was looking at all this is how similar you all actually are. You all are looking for essentially the same things. Now, you certainly say it different ways and you communicate it in different manners, but as I look through the paperwork that I received and the emails that I received, it's very similar goals. So with that being said, I just prepared a second page, so give me a second. Professional. You guys didn't expect this at all. What I did is I combined some of them on this easel stand over here that I thought were very similar, that I thought the council was trying to communicate the same thing to me, that this is what we're looking for. And I thought code enforcement and blight was essentially the same thing, just said a different way with different parameters set on it. Public safety and fire safety, we're talking about park rangers, conservation efforts, and urban interface and vegetation management. I think we're kind of similar. They're not exactly the same, but similar. So I think it would be safe to combine those two, in my opinion. I mean, if I'm incorrect, council can certainly correct me on that. And then I think fiscal responsibility and city image are two that could be combined, that we can as a common goal and move forward on those. The fiscal responsibility, that does say something about your image. If you go out there and you spend lots of dollars on things that you shouldn't be spending them on, or that the majority of your community doesn't feel is in the best interest of the community, it gives you a certain image. I mean, it's not a physical image, but it's just it's kind of like the story you carry with you, or what people know about you ahead of time. So I believe we can combine those. If I'm incorrect, we can certainly separate them. It's up to the council. Single interest items at the time when I prepared this were the emergency housing, which now has 2 council people that are interested in that. Water options, expanding the golf course and camping, collaborative council, and business development. So what I want to do from this point forward, now that I've covered all of that a little bit, is take the time. This is your goal setting. You tell me now as a council, if you would like, we can do this a couple different ways. We can put 2 of them side by side, and you can tell me each one, I support this one or I support that one, and then we can work through that through a process and add up until we get down to your top 5. Or if you are comfortable, you can and you can agree upon this, you can say these are our top 5 that we all agree on that we'd like to do, and we can erase this over here, which I'll go grab an eraser real quickly, and we can put those on there for you.
So how do you, excuse me, how do you want to format this meeting? Do you want us to speak freely, or do you want us to be in order with the queue?
I think as long as, you know what I'd really ideally like to do is see you have a conversation with one another. I mean, if Councilperson Goodson says something that Vice Mayor Thompson wants to continue on to, that's great. And then if Councilman Hatley wants to jump in, I mean, as long as that's something that you're comfortable with. This is your meeting. However, if you guys want to do push the button and get called, or if you want to just have a conversation,
Great.
I'm good either way.
So I just have a question for you before
Yes, ma'am.
the dialogue. I was wondering why you did not put city image up there with code enforcement and blight.
Because it was kind of a little bit different, but not exactly. I mean, it goes in there. It could be thrown in there. Let's say these were just my thoughts. You know, and quite honestly, I'm not a professional facilitator, or I've never done this, and you know, I'm just going to fill this thing out the best I can. If you want me to move that up there, I will certainly move it up there.
I would
And I'm
like
not
to say that hiring staff and filling these departments is going to take care of quite a bit of these problems. We just don't have enough people for a lot of these things. So when we fill these departments and we have the staff, then they will be assigned these duties. The roads will be taken care of, and the blight. It's all code enforcement, public works.
Well, you know, from where I'm sitting now and observing the organization, there's multiple problems within the organization. A lot of those do surround staffing. However, I think it's important we get to the what, and then we have to also answer the who. I mean, because it's okay to say, you know, this is what we want to do, but then my response back is, well, who's going to do it? I mean, and what I mean by that is, we have done this over and over and over, and we set these goals, and great, they're printed, they're put on the website, and kind of there we go, we move forward.
How long has that been going on?
Oh, well,
You've been here a year, right?
yes, I've been here.
Okay. So how many times have you done?
It's been going on for quite a long time, and I don't blame anybody. It's been kind of the spiral.
Right, and I'm not getting to that. I'm just wondering if it was parallel with the lack of staff.
Absolutely, it is, and I think it's not only that, but I think that when you set these goals as a council, we need to establish who is going to. If, for instance, would say, and I'm just going to grab one. We say our highest goal, our highest priority is parks. We want the parks taken care of.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, the who for that we assign is, since we are not working in a traditional department head situation, we're working mostly with mid-managers, the person responsible for that is going to be Wade. We'll call him by name since he's there. It's Wade. It's our parks supervisor. So he's going to be responsible for taking care of that. The council is going to define what it is that they want. Wade is the who that's going to do it. Then Wade, you know, I want to see not only that, but we put Wade's the staff that's responsible, and his liaison and his person who's going to ensure that we stay on track in that goal area is X council person, whoever that is. I mean, and that's just, you know, if Wade runs into an issue, that council person can check in with him periodically and regularly to make sure we're on task and we're doing those things. And then once we get that done, we establish the who. We go back to that person who we have said, this is what we want done. You're who we're saying we're going to have do it. We need to know what's in your way from keeping you or preventing you from doing that. Do you need, you know, more individuals? Do you need equipment? Do you need, what is it that is stopping us from achieving this goal? And then he brings that back to our council as a recommendation to the council, who then establishes a budget and funds the who, the needs of what the who said, so we can get to the what. I mean, because before what we've done is we've just said we need to do these things, and then we walk out here and there's no budget, there's nobody. It's just
Has to be follow-up.
right. We need to establish a whole process, and maybe I'm getting carried away. I don't know. That's just how I run my life.
So I'm inclined to go along with the mayor as far as staffing, because certainly new staff will bring fresh sets of eyes, their experiences, you know, they're going to bring that to the table. So I think that's very key in the development of our goals, assuming that everyone is on the same page with, you know, for an example, the city engineer, perhaps there's, and then of course we have out the administration, a city administrator, And in particular, that's, as you know, a pivotal role. In fact, I think that that's probably one of the biggest decisions that we're going to make in the next, few months, in my opinion, because that person's going to, obviously set, I think, this the pace for the staff and the city and whatnot. Additionally, I think that along with the staff, Bill, that giving just as priorities to the current staff, I'm concerned that we just have more of the same. In other words, if we went to Wade Atterbury and we said, well, the council's put an additional emphasis on parks and, XYZ, without supporting him and with some funding measure or something of that nature, I don't really see a lot of change, if I'm making sense with that. Without or if we have an expectation, then with that would be a funding in some way to then determine the effectiveness of whatever goal or objective that we've given him. But just throwing at staff additional tasks, and that brings me to for an example, number 1, roads. So, and it would be helpful for us with that, where are we in that? In other words, where in that progress do we have? We already have some roads, I think, earmarked, and there's already contracts out. So it would be helpful also just to have that laid out as well, kind of where we are, where we need to go, and how do we get there. So that's just kind of my comments. And initially, it's kind of agreeing with the mayor.
What I'm picturing this as, and forgive me, I'm new, but the way that it's pictured in my mind is we have these departments that are responsible for certain duties, and there's a list of duties to be facilitated somewhere. Somebody's designed that this is for the parks, this is for the public safety, whatever their list is. And when we're reassembling staff, these department heads are going to assign their employees the duties to facilitate. But it's already established, isn't it? Are we inventing this?
No, we're not inventing anything here. What we're doing is we're setting what are your top 5 priorities. Right now, we kind of just go off like a golf ball and tile bathroom, and we're everywhere.
Well, you're putting out fires because that's what the budget allowed.
Correct.
We're in a little bit better position, and we're going to move forward with it evenly with staff, is what I'm thinking.
Correct. I mean, but what we need to know is, as we build this budget, what are your goals? I mean, I agree the roads need to be fixed, but I'm not the policymakers. What we're not looking for. And this is, I'm going to tread into a dangerous area here, but I'm going to tell the council we're not looking for micromanagement.
Right.
I don't need, and I don't think our crew needs you to say that pothole needs to be fixed.
Right.
What we need to know is have an overarching thing. We want the roads fixed. Yeah. We want these roads in a sustainable, workable condition. We want at least a grade of D, which is poor. Yeah. I mean, but it's better than the Fs that we have now.
Right. Well, when I hire someone to fix my transmission, I'm not rolling up under that vehicle with him to make sure he's tightening the bolts and that. We hire professionals and we expect them to do what we hired them to do. Right. So I'm not looking for any micromanaging either.
Right. And what we're looking for, we just like to have what are your top 5. I mean, we're going to really focus our attention on. And I think that liaison with the council person is associated with the staff member is really going to be able to focus us into the area in which you're looking for, as opposed to just kind of going off in all sorts of directions.
And I think it's important discussion to have, just so the staff and we are on the same page. I mean, I agree with Mayor regarding that. We have been a treading water, putting out fires, and as we move forward, making sure that there's a clarity between staff and council. For example, before, one of the things I heard from business owners, and I still do, but less now than before, is the relationship between the city and the businesses. Often the attitude from the city to the businesses being one that is not friendly or cooperative, and so us communicating to the staff values and direction and priorities, I think, as well as for them helpful to set the goals and the priorities and the direction and values, like again, using that word again, values that we want to have represented in our community. And yeah, I agree that, you know, as we fill in some of our code enforcement and we see them funded, that's going to take care of a lot of safety. It's going to take care of, you know, our issues with blight and city image. I mean, a lot of these things are going to be tackled with the, you know, staffing in the right places, but also with that, making sure they understand our heart and our priorities and the things we want to see get done.
So let me interject something. I hear you saying that you want a top 5 priority list. And I believe that with Measure R, which failed, and then again, we know that Measure U was approved, and for 2 reasons. And I believe those are 2 priorities, our roads and our public safety. So I would venture to say those would be 2 of the top priorities. This is what our constituent base voted in.
Yeah, and I just want to echo too, when we think about housing or business, and I think you had started off talking about when a business person comes to town, you know, what are they looking at? And I think that it's incumbent upon government to ensure, you know, again, public safety, appearance, blight. Those are the kinds of things that typically business, when they're thinking about relocating and they're bringing their staff and their own family, you know, what's that community look like? What kind of value-added experiences, you know, I'm going to invest my life in this particular place. And so that's where, you know, we can, as a city, really shine and, you know, start to get the polish out and deal with some of these things. Which goes back to the Measure U and some of the, I think, mandate that comes from that. So in there, as you've already said, you know, we're kind of on the same page. I think it's just a matter of how do we get there. But and just to revisit again, I think staffing is very, very critical. But so in other words, my point is some of these are kind of self-correcting, because then if we provide an atmosphere where people say, "Gee, we want to live there. I want to bring my family there," then you know what? Then the builders will respond, because then there are people wanting to, you know, to move here. Some of that kind of just corrects itself when the city does its job and, you know, performs those functions that we've already discussed.
And I would say, if you're going to get the most bang for your buck, I mean, if anybody's interested in what I think about this, you know, even if you're not, I'm going to go ahead and share it with you. I think you're going to get the most bang for your buck, quite honestly, if you were to put your eggs into the basket right now of code enforcement to deal with code enforcement issues, blight. You can hire all the police officers that you like. Crime's still going to happen. It's not going to, it does help. It does slow things down. You get more traffic enforcement. You get those types of activities that you haven't been able to do in the past, or you have been not as aggressive on. You can be more aggressive. However, if you really want to change the image of your city, you start doing those different things through code enforcement activities, which would include dealing with the, I don't like to use the term homeless. I think that kicks up a false idea of what we're thinking about. I like to talk about the criminal element that is camouflaging themselves as transients. Homeless are people that are usually there by no fault of their own. They have multiple issues that they're dealing with. Transients, the ones that I've dealt with in my professional life, this is what they choose. They like this. This is what they do. It's just part of who they are, unfortunately. Now, they're broke toys too, and they need help, but they're not ready for that help yet. So your code enforcement will help you with that, I believe. And so I think, you know, if we put that there, I don't think that, you know, we necessarily need to make a goal of hiring. If you set that I want, if one of your goals is, or your only goal is I want the city to be staffed at a level to take care of the infrastructure that the community needs, wants, deserves, and desires. It could be as simple as that. And then staffing will start correcting those things.
Let me throw a term out here. Positive customer experience across the board, every department. And then staff come back and tell us what they need to beat that standard. Just that simple. I think it is that simple. And I like to throw it up there on the list as positive customer experience for all our customers, both existing, new ones coming in, business people, all the way, and the positive customer experience in Blight is a good example. That one person walking up to one of the stores in town is approached by someone in the parking lot, and that's a negative customer experience, and they won't forget that experience. So the next time they go back to shop at that store, there's a negative there. And the same thing with our parks. A positive customer experience in the park. And you know what that means easily by getting down into the weeds of what that's going to take to make that a positive customer experience. I think that's our bigger problem, that I think we all probably can agree to that term, and in how we get there, we're all going to have little differences about it. I would put public safety high on it because public safety generally deals with the human cause of the problem. The problems of trash and things on the street, it's a human problem. It's a people problem. But code enforcement is a people problem. If we didn't have people violating the code, it wouldn't be a problem. And that's kind of my strategy-wise looking at it. It's like the mayor says, he wants his transmission fixed and to work. He wants a positive customer experience out of that transmission. I'm kind of saying that from the same thing from the city's point of view.
So I'd like to piggyback off of what you just said. How did you say it? A
Positive customer experience.
Positive. And so what we have to address is, and I had mentioned it during one of the last city council meetings, committee reports, and I had read a statement by Butte County law enforcement that stated 80% of the criminal element is due to methamphetamine addiction. In order to have a positive customer experience, we're going to have to figure out how to collaborate efforts with county and with the city to address the root of the problem. Because, you know, you can put a Band-Aid on it, but this is it's an epidemic. That and the opiate. This is why our transient, homeless, whatever label you want to put on it, this is where this clientele stems from.
Let me add to that comment too, because I completely agree with your concept here, but as an example, if we put out the goal setting for the city of Oroville to have positive customer experience, that also relates to, and I can tell you one apartment complex that has been improved here lately, because I know the manager, and I talked to her, and she had never had the experience of the opiate drug problem she had before, but she's working beyond that. She's taking care of it herself with the help of, and I know she's been involved with the PD, and the place has now become approachable for PD to access because the management has worked together. And I'm not saying that came from the city council, and doesn't say it came from anyone else. It came from her desire as a manager of that property to improve and make it a positive customer experience for her renters. So that's why I say, as a city overall goal that meets, and it kind of sets a standard for everybody all across the board, not just the city of Oroville, but for the business owners, the business operators, the apartment rent managers, and so on and so forth. And I know that has in fact happened to a recent apartment complex we have here in town that's been a big problem for years. So if we throw that out there as an overall goal, and then let everybody work on it. I wouldn't restrict the city staff. I'd let everyone, business operators, all the communities of the populations that we work here, if we all kind of agree to it, then we get to be known by that. We get that label, positive customer experience. That's a pretty strong label to have.
It's said that half of the Fortune 500 companies in the next decade or so will be no more. And a lot of that does come back to the fact that, companies are facing just a different climate. We're in a different era, different day. And a lot of companies use this thing called Net Promoter Score, NPS, to determine how they're doing. The bottom line is, without going into all of that, I think that is certainly a value. And again, we have to, I think, get back down to the brass tacks, specifically, what can we do from where we sit to address appeal? Because people, I remember Bob did a commercial recently for the hospital. And I don't know how many of you saw it. It was on Facebook. But at the end, I think that this farmer says, "Well done, Oroville," or "Looking good," or something to that effect. I don't know how many of you saw that, but it was just a real feel-good commercial. It was really amazing. And it was all these friendly, smiling faces, clean storefronts. And at the end of that 1-minute piece, you thought, man, I'd like to live there. What a neat place. What a wonderful place. People having fun, enjoying themselves. And so again, it comes back to image. And so again, just bringing it right back around, what can we do specifically dealing with that image? It takes us right back to the blight issues, takes us right back to the road issues. So it just takes us right back to those core things. So without getting lost into, business models and strategies and all of that, which is an important conversation. The bottom line is we set the stage. And then it's up to our constituents, it's up to our businesses, and let them do what they do. But we need to provide them the fundamentals, the safe, clean roads, the nice, looking parks, and all of those things. And so again, coming back to that, so what can we do here today to start with these priorities, and what can we do specifically to begin, that function? Going back, so for example, the blight. We just last council meeting voted, I think it was unanimous, 7-0 to give you give the city $15,000 additional dollars, right, for code enforcement to begin to be able to purchase things or to deal with things to start that process. And so what maybe you can help us here, what does that look like? What do you envision as we start looking, for an example, some of the challenges? Even this past week, there was some that were pointing out the house that had fallen down by Central. Mm-hmm. And so that's just, so there's a front and center thing. You think about people coming to our city, schools are important. A lot of families make their decision about where they're gonna live based on the quality of our school. So there's collaboration with our school system. But so right now, right here today, what do you need to help facilitate some of those endeavors? And then we also voted to fix the fence. So coming in, from the north, that the city is more attractive. We don't have a broken fence and all of that. So I think we're starting to take steps here. But I think also hearing from you, what do you need from us today to then begin to put some of these nuts and bolts together to give you the power, authority, or funding to achieve some of these objectives? Because I think we're kind of coming back to the same thing.
Councilperson Draper.
Well, I was just going to interject here that instead of being so concerned about the image, I think our focus should more be on quality of life for the people here. And as the goals are more focused on that, the image is going to naturally improve. But it's even the roads, it's quality of life. It's a no-brainer. The people around here need these things done that impact them every day, like the roads and the lack of housing and the blight. Those are things that they're dealing with.
So hearing what everyone said from standing here, as you look at these two lists, what's going to take you there? What do you feel is the number one thing that's going to take you to solve? I think I've heard what you're saying, and I think I know what the answer is, and I think it's a combination of three things that is your number one goal. But I need, it doesn't matter what I think, these are your goals. So I need to know what of this things that all you've said, what takes you to where everything that you've said?
I personally, my opinion, staff, filling up these departments would take care of quite a bit of that. They're the 80-90% meth problem that we have. Everybody's on meth. Take care of that with law enforcement. They'll be able to respond more. But housing is a big one for me. Middle to upper middle income housing. What we've got is starter housing, which is low to really low income, and then we have affluent neighborhoods. We don't have hardly anything in the middle. And that's what I feel that we need. There's nowhere for people to improve it when they first get married or they're young and single. They start out with starter house, job gets better, promotion, raise, all of these things. They want to move to the next level. There's nowhere to move. So it's move out, go down to Plumas Lake or something and get you a middle to upper middle income house. That's where we lose a lot of people. There's nothing in between. And with that is all contribution. It's all people that are starting businesses, running businesses, that are spending money. We need people that are going to buy cars and boats and jet skis and bicycles, and we've got enough of where they're on assistance, where we're taking care of them. Now we need the people to contribute to be able to take care of them. Not against helping and taking care of people, but the balance, like you were talking about, with our public safety, and we're also going to topple over from too much, for lack of a better term, burden. It's a burden on the public funds. So if we don't get contribution, we're going to end up in trouble.
So could I take a stab at just a couple of these real quick that I think would combine together? And I think Councilperson Goodson put it pretty good a minute ago with these are in no particular order, and they could be completely wrong too.
For those that are in the audience, just to read it to you, it says code enforcement, blight, and community image is on the top there, and then staffing is number 2, and then housing.
And if I could just, staffing is kind of staffing, quite honestly, is going to take care of itself. If you say our number 1 priority is code enforcement, we're going to have to build you a robust code enforcement program that can take care of the code enforcement and the quality of life issues that you're talking about, because I believe that, you know, due to the changes in the law through AB 109 and many other things that have happened over the course of the last few years, Proposition 4757 and all of those issues that have arisen out of that, it's very difficult to try to enforce away a lot of the issues that exist now. It's going to take a holistic approach to a community's problems, and it's going to be many different things. No one answer is going to solve it, because if there was one answer, somebody would be doing it and we would just adopt that model. But staffing is going to take care of itself. I know it's important. I know that they should be properly trained. I believe that we should adopt, I like to use the term PAC, and what that stands for is what I've trained my people in the past, is that it stands for performance, accountability, and a commitment to great customer service and quality work. It's real simple. It's something we all can remember, and that's what we want them to do. Your accountability goes all directions, inward and outward. Your performance, you need to perform at the highest possible level. So I believe that's what we do, and we just do that. Housing, I'm hearing multiple different things. I'm hearing not only housing doesn't include just that aspect of it. It's the building department, it's the planning department, it's ensuring that we have all of the tools in place so that when someone comes in and they say, hey, I either have a 50-unit affordable housing complex, or I have a subdivision over here I want to build of moderate to mid-level homes, that we have everything in place so that we can make those things happen quickly for those folks and they can get started building those. I mean, nothing makes me more excited than turning dirt and boards being nailed together, because that's a positive thing for our community. So, you know, I think that's what I'm hearing, and that's, you know, kind of the goal of housing. But that's, again, these are your goals.
Yeah, that's great. For me, just a couple questions on the side. You mentioned at the beginning, and I'm on page, I think we are all saying the same thing regarding, you know, number 1 specifically, code enforcement and blight, and kind of getting the city moving forward, and also with the housing. But you mentioned something at the beginning in regarding to percentage to public safety, not wanting to go over a tipping point. You mentioned a 60 I believe is what you said.
I believe that was the number that was provided at the last council meeting, wasn't it, Ruth? That 68% of our budget is for public safety at this point.
How does that fluctuate with Measure U? Is that Measure?
Well, your budget's going to increase, so your revenues are going to
That's gonna
increase by
come-
X amount of dollars. So 68% of 12 million was this number.
Right.
68% of 16 million will be another number, which will exponentially, if you adopt the same model and go the same way, you'll be rolling that same amount of money into public safety.
And also, just with that, because you mentioned my concern is with not wanting to just add to I think this just goes back to the initial comment, because a lot of comments I've been getting over the years since I've been on city council is people in the community here saying, you know, hey, this person, literally I had a picture of them, vandalized, kicked my car, whatever, gave it to the police officers, and they said they just don't have staff to take care of it. For me, that's, you know, something I would like not to see happen in our city, or at least to have code or whoever, city staff or police or whatever, to be able to handle even things like that. Would that be in code enforcement, or would that be with the public safety, or how could we, you know, have things like that taken care of for our community? Do you feel free to speak freely?
Okay. No, I highly doubt what the person said. I don't think they're being truthful. I think that it met their story and their narrative for the time, so that's what they told. I have never, but then again, you know, I'm different.
Sure.
I have not had the experience where the police have shown up and said, well, I'm not doing that. You know, unless people, and you know, I can tell you from my experience as a police officer, oftentimes you show up and people want you to do stuff that's illegal. They want, because they don't understand the law. They've watched television and they formed an opinion based upon that. And they have unrealistic expectations of what you can or can't do, and they forget to tell you the other part of the story about, you know, it's kind of like the Paul Harvey moment. Well, what was your role in this? I mean, because, you know, there's a lot of Pollyannas out there that report a lot of things that never did anything. Then you later find out, well, you know, actually you're the instigator and you're the problem.
With that, and I hear you, and I
So, I mean,
agree that there are those
balance.
stories out there that's trying to make drama and whatnot. You have to go through the law, and you can't just, you know,
Correct.
arrest somebody for hearsay. But with that as well, I know there's a lot of, and maybe this is maybe I can have an individual conversation with you, but in regarding our businesses and the amount of shoplifting that takes place.
There is an answer, and I think what we're getting at here is, it took me a minute. Oxygen's, you know, rose up. You know, I think that what we would do is through our code enforcement program and a robust municipal law enforcement, which would be rolled into the code enforcement. You know, they'd have their other duties, but also this. I think you would look at a community diversion program where we can work with these individuals, that, you know, we can provide options. We can provide either, you know, you do this or we do that.
You clean up the parks for 2 weeks, and, you know, because as well, I know if the businesses, they're part of the reason they're a struggle of theirs is the amount of shoplifting.
Correct.
And I'm even talking to the safety department, or the what do they call it, theft provision, or
Loss prevention.
Yeah, loss prevention guys, and they're not even able to confront these people anymore,
Right.
because of liabilities. And so people literally can grab their stuff and look at these people who are the loss prevention officers or whatever, and just smile at them as they walk out the door. It'd be nice to have it with our business communities, to have a really, with code enforcement and safety, to really be able to tackle some of these things. And that's why, for me, public safety and working with our businesses, doing what we can, so that, you know, we can create an environment where middle, you know, income people can come to the community, and you know, the businesses don't have to jack up the prices to compensate for people who are just walking out the store with.
Right, and the reason why I keep going back to code enforcement is because, you know, I want to keep these as non-sworn personnel, because when you get in, you have two different tiers of retirement packages through PERS.
I
You
agree
get into
with that
that
100%.
very expensive.
I
If
agree
we
with that
stay over
100%,
here,
yeah.
I think one of the things that we do with Walmart is Walmart does most of their own paperwork, and that gets sent to the DA's office. So if we were to have a robust code enforcement program, that they could work with the local retailers, train them to do that, they could fill out most of their own paperwork, and, you know, it's a little bit more of a burden on them, but it may give them the satisfaction that they're looking for. You know, there are more things that we can do. I think it's just, you know, I think you're looking at quality of life issues. Yeah, you're back to staffing.
Well, I think we also talk about the workload that's being presented to our staff is going to be feedback to us. And I know in code enforcement blight, I think the last time I heard a number was close to 600 or 700 open cases with one officer to handle. That's obviously a problem for us to deal with and to staff appropriately. When you have that kind of workload, that we're not addressing enough staff to take care of that particular issue, whether it be code enforcement for blight, or whether it be shoplifting, or whether it be traffic, or whether it be, you know, whatever categories out there. That's what we need to hear too in the upcoming budget hearings, is where can we best get the best bang for our dollar to be spent. But it all relates back to my thing about, you know, positive customer experience. If that someone has their car broken into in the parking lot, and the stuff is ripped off, and you know, how many times is that happening? How much reporting of that do we get? Do we know about? And I certainly am not looking for finding out that we didn't do anything, but it's more like a workload issue. Shoplifting in this town is a big deal. I've heard many stores talk about it. It's a big deal from policy for the stores that won't allow anybody to stop them. So we need to have that thorough discussion with, you know, creating and I've seen it happen 2 or 3 times. In fact, I saw one store, the 2 girls grabbed something, got in the car, and the 2 store employees were trying to stand in front of the car so it wouldn't leave, and the gal, well, you know, really was going to drive over them. That's pretty negative for a customer to see that happen in front of a place. So those are the things I'm looking for the positive customer experience for our community. How can we deter that or reduce that element? That's the tough one. I agree, it's tough.
Then that's going to require that we get involved in advocacy at the legislature level. I mean, as long as petty theft is up to $950 per incident, you're going to have this, and it's not just Oroville. I mean, this is going on. Well, it's epidemic all over California. And I agree with that. In fact, I don't stop at that level, because I believe that the state is not our friend in any way, shape, or form. It's just a classic example. I'm sure it's still the same way. A traffic ticket in this town that costs $100, the city of Oroville gets less than $9 of that, if that's still correct. Yes, sir.
Right.
That's just a crime. That's criminal on the state of California to throw that on this small city. And that's a crime that I got no problem running to the legislature with. I don't know if they're going to listen to it. I've been there before. I've been thrown out of 2 committee hearings over that. It's a crime that a city like this is directly getting a small amount of that money. That's ridiculous. And the same thing about petty theft. Can we, in our city ordinances, change that? That'll be a question to our legal staff. I mean, those are the things that I'm kind of looking for. The same thing with housing. One of the big problems is housing is the cost of housing coming from the Sacramento. They're throwing numbers and requirements that raise the cost of housing here 2 and 3 times more than it is out of any other state. So it's great for us to have a great policy, but the builders aren't building.
Well, I think you run into a lot of issues with that, and legislative advocacy may be one of your goals, because, you know, you're looking at, you know, one of the issues you're talking about is prevailing wage. That is very difficult in this area for our local contractors, for the oversight and everything. The bathroom at the city hall here, to get that remodeled, it would cost about between $12,000 and $15,000 to get the tile taken out, the urinal removed, and a proper one put in, proper ADA upgrades. Unfortunately, we fall underneath the prevailing wage provisions of the codes, which takes the project from $15,000 to about $60,000. That is detrimental to small, and we're a micro municipality. I mean, let's be real with ourselves, what we are, and we cannot afford those types of things. So what we are is we're stuck with a 19 whatever year this building was built bathroom, because we just can't change that.
So, you know, we're not going to change AB 109 tomorrow.
No.
Right? So again, it comes back to what kinds of things can we specifically do, and it comes back to funding issues. So code enforcement officers obviously are less expensive. Mm-hmm. So, and then we have to set the bar, and it comes back, the city sets the standard for the community. So what about an extra code enforcement person that they just roam our malls?
Or 5.
But I'm just saying, in other words, you identify or have a particular track or they move around, and begin to have and work on and get some training and customer service and presence, because presence goes a long way to deterring, criminal behavior. So that's just in other words, comes back to what can we do here tonight as far as a decision? Does that mean a couple of additional code enforcement personnel to begin to create a higher level of visibility and servicing our constituents in response and being out there in the field? And then it comes back down around to things that we allow. If we allow lawlessness will rise to that opportunity, which comes back down to the whole blight. Where are we at in that matrix of moving things along? I think you guys were doing some training, code enforcement training.
Yes, we just did the other day with
and so just so kind of what steps right now are being taken, and then how can we then facilitate that or increase that? So as we talk about blight and all that, if we stand to do nothing, then all we can expect is more of the same. And so obviously we have to make a change. And then I think, and then that sends a message. So once people begin to experience, if I allow that, I'm going to have a negative experience with the city. And then that message gets around. If you mess around in Oroville, they have had a change in their standards. Maybe you ought to go elsewhere and, take that activity someplace else, but not here, not in our town, if you will. Pardon the pun, but so I think we have to start with those steps that we can digest. You take the elephant down one bite at a time, right? So, so what did you do in your training, and then what kinds of things do we need to begin to do to bolster that?
You need to set policy. That's what you do, is set policy.
So,
and your policy is our number one goal. Our number one thing we want done is we want code enforcement, we want blight removal, and we want to improve the community image.
Like one of the things that makes it easy for the transients is buggies. Walmart, they belong to Walmart. Food Max, they belong to Food Max. So when we see, that's just one thing in the policy. So is that theft?
That's not policy. That's going into managing of the program.
Okay.
You set policy that's what you want done. You let the people that do it, but when you see those things, you say, look, we set this policy. This is who we put responsible for this. Why aren't you doing this? That is what we want done. And those are things that I think that, when we see those, you make that real clear. This is what this council wants done. And then you hold staff's feet to that fire.
And what we need to remember is we have department heads that will handle their departments. We shouldn't be calling staff directly and directing them. That creates confusion.
That makes it difficult at times when you have, especially if it's a conflicting, direction from two different council peoples. Because believe me, council persons, what I want to do as staff is I want to please you all. I want to serve you all, and sometimes you have conflicting ideas of where we're headed. What the most confusing part right now, sometimes of working in Oroville, is what is the policy? What are we doing? So we need that unified front going the same direction. And I think what I'm hearing, and I'm hearing it from all of you, is that we want to address code enforcement and the blight and the community image. I haven't heard from Art yet, and I'm not sure where Art's at on any of this, but I'm hearing that as an important thing from
It's a
all of you.
priority.
Well, the code enforcement and the blight, we've had 140 plus employees here, and we still had problems. So you can't just say we're going to throw staff at something and fix it. But the problem that we have here is we can say, as a council, our priority is code enforcement and blight. And then if we don't see a big change, it's like, I don't care what city you go to, you can get approached walking up to any store. I don't care if you're in Sacramento, LA, I don't care where you're at. It's just going to happen. But the thing is, if we say that's our main priority, and all of a sudden we're still getting complaints of, well, we still have transient, and we wanted the part of the blight stuff, we wanted our parks and all of that cleaned up too. Well, that's fine and dandy, but those people have rights. And so you're not going to just walk in there and run them off. You're not going to do a whole lot of things. There's a law that says they can't stand on the freeway and beg for money, but the DA won't prosecute it, so they stand on the freeway and beg for money. So that's the first thing you see when you come on and off of it. So, there's nothing we can do about that. And if we say code enforcement, then that would be what I would want to hear back from staff, the professionals that are going to be doing this, to say, okay, I understand what you're saying, but here is what I can actually give you in that area. I can't do this. Well, yeah, but I want you to run those guys off. No, I can't because the law says I can't. And so to make, a policy that says, I want this done, well, come back and tell me exactly what I'm going to get for that, by that being my priority. Because if I say, yeah, we want to get rid of blight, and then we still hear story after story after story of blight, well, then you're going to say, well, you're not doing, we that was our number one. Why aren't you doing it? We're not getting the feedback that says, well, if that's what you want, here is what we can give you for that. But we can't do this, this, and this because it's illegal to do this and this and this. And that's what everybody has to understand. And you're right. I mean, these are good things, and these are what should be done, but there's limitations to what can be done. And as long as everybody understands that and says, well, we're not getting what we wanted, we still have these problems. Well, yeah, you're going to have them because legally we can't do anything about that. Certain things we can, but certain things we can't. And that's all I want to. I just want the flow to go back and forth so that you don't walk in here on Tuesday night and we're going, well, gee, Chief, we gave you what our priority was and we still have the same issues. And it'd be better right up front to say, okay, I understand this is what you're going to get, but here's what I can give you in that thing.
Well, I think that, and I agree with you. I think what goals should never be looked at once every 365 days or 400 days, whatever we get around to doing it. Once you do these things, they need to remain alive. I mean, you need to hear back from them every 90 days. What's going on? What's happened? Have whoever's in charge of or pushing that goal, accomplishing that. What have you accomplished? What obstacles have you ran into? What's changed? What are we seeing out there? So when we do get that feedback, hey, I see these guys running around with all these carts. What are you doing about that? I mean, that can be directly communicated. There's those types of things. And I think that's where we've fallen down. Code enforcement, quite honestly, for as long as I can remember, has been a paper tiger. There's been nothing behind it other than just a title and talk. We are taking the steps right now to bolster that and to strengthen that. We've put money, but we put dollars behind it at the last meeting. We're getting if the council approves the agreement with the law firm.
We need to convene a closed session.
And Chief, just real quickly, I don't see roads on there, and that is a huge problem all over this city. Where would roads fit on that first one up there for the blight?
I think it would go in probably number 4. We have a few more spots.
Okay.
What we can do if you would like it. I think that I really enjoyed the conversation. I think it's been a really healthy thing for all of us. If it's good with the council and it works for everybody, I'd like to just kind of put this stuff away until the next council meeting and maybe 1 hour before the next council, if you have the time and we can work it in. Have another conversation because it's not a 1 hour conversation. This was originally scheduled for a better part of a day. We're trying to just do it on a regular schedule. So if that will work with you or for you, I'd really like to do that. And because I think we've had some healthy conversation about code enforcement at this point, but I think roads need to be talked about and housing also needs to be talked about.
At this time, we're going to convene a closed session.
You can go to Paradise and pick up that stuff and take it.
no thanks.
Right.
so glad to see you. It's always good to hear from people. What you saying? No, I know what you're saying.
Do 11:30 in the morning instead? Okay,
Yeah, you bet.
'cause I have a staff meeting, 9:30.
Hey, Lynn, how you doing? That'll be a while. Okay. All right, man.
Doing well, how are
Yeah.
you?
Yeah, putting that in there will be okay.
Yeah, I think
Nobody bump their head on the feet. Yeah.
some veterans, some quantity, whatever, from northeast or whatever. Because they complain about
Like to call this meeting to order. At this time, we're reconvening from a recess, and we're going to recite the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand. Salute. Pledge. Looking for a motion to adopt the agenda.
Make a motion that we adopt the agenda as written.
A second.
I thought I did too.
Motion carries.
Thank you. At this time, we're going to move on to presentations and proclamations. And we have a proclamation here recognizing Pat 4. Is there someone here to accept this? A proclamation in recognition and appreciation of Pat 4. Whereas the Oroville City Council and all departments of the City of Oroville recognize and appreciate the extraordinary contributions given so generously by Pat 4 to this community. And whereas Pat was an Oroville resident for over 85 years and was at the forefront of many volunteer activities over the years, even as a young girl. And whereas Pat's love for serving community and the less fortunate was not something Pat did on the side. It was her life. Whereas Pat began donating her time to the Oroville Police and Fire Departments in 1989 and helping with day-to-day tasks, promoting programs such as Shoes That Fit, Blankets for Babies, and Shop with a Cop, and organizing clothing, food, household article drives for those in need due to a crisis. She lived to help others. And whereas police and firefighters will always remember Grandma Pat for her delicious rum cakes, homemade Thanksgiving and Christmas meals, and her love for each of them. She was more than a volunteer. She was family. And whereas Pat will be sincerely missed by all, and our community will not be the same without her. Now, therefore, I, Chuck Reynolds, Mayor of the City of Oroville, in concurrence with the City of Oroville City Council, do hereby recognize Pat for her generosity and valuable contributions to the Oroville community and urge all citizens to join with me in this sincere expression of appreciation for her outstanding service and love for our community. Can we get a hand? I don't know if you guys realize this, but Pat Ford was the creator of the Cake Room Pizza, and she was famous. So, and I want to present this to her grandson. Okay, next item in presentations is number 2, fluoridation of water presentation by Jenny Miller and fluoride removal process presentation by Cal Water. Is this 2 separate things?
Yes, it is. Ms. Miller will go first, and then Cal Water will follow.
Thank you.
Yes,
Yes.
ma'am, at the podium up here.
So, for people who are in the audience or watching online, there's a lot of information in here which I have documented in a separate document, and I understand both the presentation and the sources will be included in the minutes. So if you want to check this out for yourself, look in the minutes for the sources, because all of this is documented. Hello, Mayor Reynolds and City Council members. Many decades ago, Oroville voted in favor of adding fluoride to its water supply. However, our expanding knowledge of the very detrimental health impacts of adding industrial fluoride to the water and the immense increase in public exposure to fluoride from other sources and the risk to our water supply in the event of a catastrophic overfeed, that's when too much gets released into the water. All of this makes it urgent to put a halt to this practice as soon as possible, and this will also save Cal Water customers $50,000 to $60,000 per year, since that is the amount total that we are paying for adding industrial fluoride to our water. The product used in fluoridation, sodium fluoride or fluorosilicic acid, are classified as hazardous waste products of the fertilizer, aluminum, and nuclear industries. They are even more toxic than naturally occurring fluoride. An article in the Journal of Environmental and Public Health explains the fluoride compounds added into municipal water for human ingestion purposes is synthesized by industrial reactions and have been used as rodenticides, that is rat killers, and insecticides with acute oral lethal doses in experimental animals comparable to arsenic and lead. Even naturally occurring fluoride in areas with high concentrations has been found to have extremely adverse health effects. Studies done in India and China found skeletal fluorosis, which is an advanced arthritic condition, in areas containing naturally occurring fluoride as low as 0.7 parts per million. That is the amount, 0.7 parts per million, that our federal government is recommending as optimal for fluoridation. In Oroville, Cal Water is adding fluoride to the water supply to achieve a level of 0.83 parts per million. So this is slightly higher than what the government is recommending. The fluoride compounds added to municipal water also contain other toxic heavy metals such as arsenic, and they cause leaching of lead from pipes into the water supply. In addition to the fluoride found in our water, people are now exposed to multiple sources of fluoride in pesticides, tea, antidepressants, antibiotics, pollution from manufacturing, Teflon pans, toothpaste, many wines, etc. This massive exposure to fluoride did not exist in the 1940s when fluoridation was introduced. Adding hazardous fluoride waste to the water supply is particularly harmful to people with kidney disease who can't excrete it properly, infants, because when it's mixed with formula, it far exceeds the safe amount of fluoride, farm workers who are already exposed to high amounts of fluoride in pesticides, tea drinkers, people who take certain medications, people who have low thyroid because it does lower the thyroid, industrial workers who are exposed to high levels at work, and those who have chemical sensitivities. Also adversely affected are people who drink lots of water, such as diabetics, athletes, and manual laborers. Many civil rights groups and leaders have come out in opposition to the practice of fluoridation. There is some precedent for ending fluoridation in our community, since as of now only part of Oroville is served by Cal Water, which is the company that is adding industrial fluoride. The residents of Oroville who are served by South Feather River and Thermalito are allowed to escape these detrimental impacts as well as the additional charges to their water bills. In ending fluoridation, Oroville will be joining numerous other health-conscious communities in California which have either eliminated fluoridation or voted to prevent its implementation. A partial list includes Chico, Redding, Cotati, Santa Barbara, Santa Rosa, Napa, Santa Cruz, Olivehurst, Davis, and there are quite a few other cities. In addition to those cities, hundreds of other communities have eliminated industrial fluoride waste from their water throughout the U.S. and Europe. Only about 3% of Europeans are exposed to fluoride in their water, additional fluoride, compared to 66% of Americans. In any discussion of this topic, I'm sure you will hear of the great wonders that fluoridation has brought to the teeth of our country's children. There is one easy way that we can tell if the touted miracle of fluoridation is everything that it is claimed to be. What has happened in the countries that don't fluoridate their water or stopped fluoridating it? Has there been an immense outbreak of cavities and other dental problems in the mouths of those children? The answer is no. Quite the contrary. According to statistics kept by the World Health Organization, the teeth of children in those countries have not suffered at all. Dental health has been improving in Europe and the US for some time, and there is no correlation between this improvement and the addition of fluoride chemicals to the water. In some of the unfluoridated European countries, the rate of decayed teeth in children is approximately the same as in the US, and in the rest, the amount of decayed teeth is actually lower than ours. None of them show any increase as a result of cessation of fluoridation. Similarly, there was a dental health official in Auckland, New Zealand named John Colquhoun, who was frustrated by the lack of acceptance by the public of the miracle of fluoridation. He decided to do a study of countries around the world comparing dental health in fluoridated versus non-fluoridated countries. To his astonishment, he found that the non-fluoridated countries had better dental health than the ones that were adding fluoride. Or let's take an example closer to home. There is one state in the country that has been fluoridating the longest and has achieved almost complete fluoridation of their water supply. so they must have the best teeth in the country. No, the rate of decayed and missing teeth in people in Kentucky, the state I'm talking about, is far, far higher than in other states. I mean, dramatically higher. Or what about this news report from a low-income county in Texas? After 9 years and $3 million of adding fluoride, research shows tooth decay hasn't dropped among the poorest of Bexar County's children. It has only increased, up 13% this year. One possible clue to why this is happening is the study that shows children with less than optimum nutritional status do not derive benefit from fluoridation and in fact have increased fluorosis, which refers to stained and pitted teeth. In my attached sources, you will see descriptions and citations of a long list of studies showing harmful effects of fluoridation regarding a variety of conditions: lowered IQ, diabetes, kidney problems, bone cancer, osteoarthritis, bone fractures, and hypothyroidism. You will find these descriptions in a position paper by a large international organization of dentists and in a letter by the investigator Aaron Brockovich, which is also signed by the American Academy of Environmental Studies. Another source is the Environmental Working Group, which lists many studies about the harmful health effects of fluoridation, providing the basis of their opposition to the 0.7 part per million government recommendation. I encourage you to read through some of these descriptions, which have citations from medical and dental journals or government studies. I think one of the most relevant studies to look at is the 2017 NIH-sponsored study on the effect of a fluoride level of 0.7 parts per million, the government recommended amount. This is lower than what we're getting in Oroville if we get Cal Water. And the study was regarding the rate of ADHD and hyperactivity in children. As I'm sure you're aware, learning disabilities and hyperactivity are major problems for our young people, and they can possibly prevent a child from growing up to be a successful member of society, and also can be disruptive to others in the classroom. The study found water fluoridation prevalence was positively associated with ADHD prevalence. Geographic regions and states in which a greater proportion of people received fluoridated water from public water systems tended to have a greater proportion of children and adolescents diagnosed with ADHD. This suggests that living in an optimally fluoridated community increases a child or adolescent's risk of developing this disorder. Another study that should be a particular concern was one done in the UK, which found the rate of hypothyroidism, that is low thyroid, to be twice as high for people living in a fluoridated town as opposed to a nearby town that was not fluoridated. Mass medication with fluoride, which the FDA calls an unapproved drug, does not allow for the suffering it causes to those families who are already dealing with issues of ADHD, diabetes, chemical sensitivity, kidney problems, or potential bone fractures. It doesn't allow for industrial or agricultural workers who are already exposed to very high amounts of fluoride. There have been massive accidental releases of fluoridation chemicals in other cities. Let's not wait for another dam catastrophe or big storm or tornado which could cause an unanticipated release into our water or air of all the extremely toxic chemicals contained in these additives. Please do whatever you can to ensure the safety of our residents and our water by eliminating fluoridation in the rest of Oroville's water supply.
Thank you. Cal Water.
Good evening, Mayor Reynolds and Council. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to address this issue. My name's George Barber. I'm the District Manager for California Water Service in Oroville. And I want to give you a little history and background into this situation. So back in the 50s, the city of Oroville and the County Board of Supervisors passed resolutions requesting California Water Service to begin fluoridating their water. They did not make that request to South Feather, nor did they make it to Thermalito. Cal Water declined that request. Our process has always been, we work with regulators, we work within the rules, and we declined at that time to fluoridate. So the City Council and the County Board of Supervisors took that information and they took it to the California Public Utilities Commission, and they demanded the CPUC require us to start fluoridating. And the CPUC sided with them. So back in 1954, Cal Water began fluoridating the water because we were required to. So we manage that process as we're required. A city of this size, a water system of this size, is not required to fluoridate, nor is it required to even address fluoridation. When you reach a certain threshold, the state DDW requires you to at least put a plan in place. If somebody was willing to fund that plan, then you have to begin fluoridating. We're not in that case in a city of this size. So based on our information and understanding, if you choose as a body to stop the fluoridation process, you have to unwind all of those actions. So you as a council would have to pass a resolution requesting that process stop. The Butte County Board of Supervisors would have to pass a similar resolution. That would have to go to the PUC, and they would have to concur and agree with your decision to stop this process. We've already spoke to the Department of Drinking Water, and their opinion is that if the council and the Board of Supervisors make that request and it's required by PUC, that's no problem with them. So we have a process where we do that now. Those pumps are regulated to flow. They are set to try and achieve the 7 number. So, you know, the flows fluctuate, so they bounce up and down. And when you get that number she reported that's a little bit higher, that's just the average over time. So we've provided information in the past at the request of the former mayor and Councilman Thompson. We'd be happy to re-forward that out to all of you if you'd like to see it again. But and I'll answer any questions you have, but that's our understanding of the process.
Vice Mayor Thompson's in the queue.
Without a resolution, can you reduce the parts per million? Is that something that, or what isn't actually in the, you know, the guidelines or the law that was given to you?
Well, Greg can jump up if he needs to, but basically when that process to fluoridate is set, then DDW sets our parameters based on what they would require a larger city to fluoridate at. So we can't just arbitrarily decide to only provide a smaller amount.
So you can't, can the DDW, you know, I'm just looking at, because is it possible to reduce, at least in the meantime, to
give us as a range? We have a range from 0.7 to 1.2. We have to be within that range to be in regulation. So we have a range to meet for the guidelines. Mm-hmm. It's 0.7 to 1.2.
So 0.7 of them is the minimum. Is that what you're saying?
That's correct. It's only been in the last few years that it's been lowered to 0.7.
So is it the state?
The EPA came out and said that 0.7 is the magic number.
So they said they said that it's a max, or that's just the?
It's just a guideline again.
Is it possible?
There's no hard fast number for this.
Gotcha. Is it possible to us or you to, at least in the meantime until a resolution is passed, to have that PPE?
A 0.83 is within that range. It's even maybe on the lower side of
1.7
to 1.2. So I think we're right in the.
Yeah, and if I follow what you're asking, we could pass, if you passed a request to lower it, we could pass that on to DDW, but I seriously doubt they're going to make a decision outside the parameters that are set by the EPA.
Department of Drinking Water.
I'm sorry, that's state of California.
I have a question. In the 50s, when you were ordered to do this, you said that the other water agencies weren't included in that. Are they now?
No, they're not.
They don't provide fluoride.
The only avenue for, to make that requirement was through the PUC, and the PUC does not regulate South Feather, nor does North Thermalito. They're independent agencies.
Excuse me, ma'am, we're not open for public comment right now. Okay, thank you. Are there any questions from the dais?
When Oroville chose to have it done, was that by action of the council or a vote of the public?
Action of the council, not a vote of the public. So it doesn't have to go back to the people to rescind. It could be a decision by you, but also the County Board of Supervisors would have to be in agreement and pass a resolution as well, is our understanding.
Okay, thank you.
All right,
Okay,
thanks.
thank you. I'd like to remind the public that if you'd like to speak on a particular item, you need to fill out a blue card or make a request before. We can't allow shouting from the audience because then it just creates chaos. Thank you. Okay, moving on to public communication. Hearing of non-agenda items. Madam Clerk, do we have any speakers?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, we do. I'm counting them really quick. We have 9 public speakers for public comment. Our first speaker is Lynn Root, and then Brian Flicker.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and City Council members.
Microphone.
Sorry, a little short here. My name is Lynn Root. I'm a 5th generation Oroville resident. I actually live in the county, but I do all my business here in the city. And so the things that happen with the council obviously directly affect me. I would like to say that I've gotten to know Linda Draper during her campaign for city council. I've witnessed a lot of the council issues through the news and various Facebook sites, and have had discussions with Linda. I know her to be diligent and sincere in her desire to serve on the council, as I'm sure every single one of you are. And I also have known her to be involved in the community issues and on committees in an effort to do the job for which she was elected. And she has always been informed and prepared. On March 25th, I heard some news that was upsetting and quite frankly embarrassing. 2 council members have been removed from their committee assignments. These 2 council members are women, the only women on the council, and are the 2 women who were serving on the council prior to the election of the new mayor. Accusations are now flying, fingers are being pointed, and instead of the focus of the council being on community improvement and addressing the myriad of important issues, the focus is now on infighting, justifications, validations, and particularly vocal groups taking sides. This is not conducive to improving our community, addressing budget needs and priorities, finding solutions to the homeless situation, working to bring down water costs, and making this community a desirable destination. If council members are to be removed from their committee assignments, recognizing they were elected to represent their constituents, my humble opinion is that the mayor may want to be a little more transparent regarding the evaluation tool or standards of participation.
Time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Root. Mr. Attorney, would you like to speak on this, please?
Yes. So, first of all, I want to caution council that when we have unscheduled public comment that's not related to an agenda item, I generally notify the public and the council members that they're not permitted to respond in a substantive way to these comments at this time because they're not agendized and they haven't had the benefit of the staff review and investigation of each of the issues. With this particular issue, we are aware, the city attorney's office is aware, council's function is to continue to operate and to address all of the needs that were identified by the speaker with respect to your community priorities. And it is the job of the city attorney's office to ensure that any claims are run through the appropriate process to determine what the facts of the matter are and to also determine what appropriate outcomes there may be. So in furtherance of doing that, having received this, we have assessed the issue and we'll be using outside counsel to do that. We have not identified that counsel yet, but it's independent, so the independence of the investigation is important. So for all of those who want to speak about this issue, what you should take consideration of before you speak about it is, first of all, the council is not going to be able to comment. Secondly, the investigation will be conducted by a neutral outside. Every allegation that comes to us like this, be it discriminatory conduct, be it sexual harassment, be it abusive conduct in the workplace or violence in the workplace, each one of those is immediately assessed by my office to ensure that it's properly dealt with, so that everyone who's involved in the investigation gets a fair and appropriate opportunity to present their facts, and then we assess that from there. So we don't handicap these, we don't try and figure out what happened before we speak to everyone, but I would encourage all of you to understand that the integrity of an investigation like this means that those who were potentially involved may not be able to comment. We wouldn't recommend that they do, leading up to the time in which the investigator can actually gather the information and make their conclusions of fact. If they do comment, that may or may not interfere with the validity or the stability of the investigation, but it also will cause the investigator to have to expand the investigation to include the time period that those comments were made. So that can really substantially increase the costs of an investigation like this. So I just encourage everyone to let the investigation do its work. The city has procedures that are in place when we have these kinds of things that are raised by employees, members of the public, in connection with our employees, volunteers, contractors, all sorts of individuals who are related to the city and its business. So in furtherance of letting that investigation do its work, and we would just simply request that you are understanding that the process does take a little bit of time.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Brian Flicker, and then Bobby O'Reilly.
Seems like almost every time I come here, I start talking about one of these things. I don't know if I can say what I want to say in 2 minutes because we've got the time down, and I'm just wasting that telling you that. But anyway, I was here for the goal setting thing, and there was a couple of things I just jotted some notes down that I wanted to share with you guys because I didn't have the opportunity to interact with you during it. I just want to point out that I think that your guys' job is to be the visionary. It's not your job to deal with the individual department heads and tell them. I would strongly discourage you from doing what was suggested in assigning council members to specific departments or areas of interest, because I think that just furthers to debilitate the cohesiveness of you guys as a unit, and I think you'll be much more effective. I think Bill said it clearly that, you know, in getting your responses to the goal setting, you all had the same ideals. You all wanted to do the same things. You may have different priorities, but you all want to get the same things. But it's not your job to decide how those things get done. It's just your idea to prioritize them, give them to the city administrator, let them figure out how it gets done. He may come back to you and say, I need more money, I need more people, but I would strongly discourage you from independently getting involved with the department heads. I think there needs to be that buffer so you don't get into the mismanagement and force the department heads to get into the politics. You know, I think we all agree that blight is a huge issue, and I'm personally doing something about that. I know there are several other groups involved in it now that I've got involved in it. But I think, and I thought about this after I was on the drive home to grab some lunch in the break, I really think it's a problem that we all have. I don't think any of us can solve that problem by ourselves. I don't think throwing money at it, I don't think throwing staff at it is going to solve that problem. I think we need to get the community involved, and maybe some advertising to that effect to say, if you see someone throwing trash on the ground, confront them, or walk over in front of them and say, I'll get that for you, and pick it up. But we all need to actively get involved in solving that problem. Money and people, staff, aren't going to solve that problem. It's incumbent upon all of us as citizens of this community to solve that problem. Thank you.
Thanks, Brian.
Next speaker.
Bobby O'Reilly and then Sherry Bunker.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Such a limited time for so many things to say. So first I want to say that I'm mad. I am angry. I am frustrated. I am beyond words and expression of the stories that have come from the media about this council and members of this council in the recent few days or week. For council members to claim racism in the council, to claim gender discrimination in the council, you can bat your eyes all you want, lady. Okay?
I'm not batting my
Please,
eyes.
I'm speaking.
Okay.
To claim these things, and then to do what you two did yesterday, to sit on a city street in front of a blighted house and hold signs that degrade the seat you sit in, that completely disrespect this staff, and then you want to claim the things that you claim and wonder why? Your actions took you off your committees. Your actions speak louder than words. I'm glad you have comment. Your actions got you where you are, not racism. You want to cry wolf about racism? That muddies the water for when there is racism, because people don't want to believe it because of incidents like this. About gender discrimination, same thing. It's ridiculous, it's angering, and it's dishonoring your community.
Time.
Next speaker.
Sherry Bunker and then Randy Murphy.
Good evening, Council, Mr. Mayor, and everybody. What I'm passing out is a copy of Assembly Bill 1111, and I would like to urge the Council to send a letter of support to our legislatures. This bill creates the Office of Outdoor Recreation. We live in outdoor recreation here. We need to support this office. I'm not a big fan of more government, but this is one that I think would benefit our community greatly. It undertakes certain activities supporting the outdoor recreation economy, which is at this point, I'm wanting to say it's a $98 billion industry in the nation. We can get part of that money in our community. The second thing I would like to do
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, on behalf of the Oroville Exchange Club, I would like to present you with this flag so that you can fly it on top of your building instead of the rag that you have up there currently. Thank you.
Thank you. I accept that with honor, Ms. Bunker. Thank you so much.
Randy Murphy and then Diane Brown.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. I would like to share with you a little information that I gathered when we were doing a river cleanup about 2 weeks ago, 2.5 weeks ago. We collected about 35 yards of trash on the island immediately below Bedrock Park and the peninsula out behind Centennial, neither of which, I might add, are within the jurisdiction of Feather River Rec and Park District. That said, it needed to be done because if anybody's looked at the river today, it would be somewhere on its way to San Francisco if we hadn't done that. However, I wanted to share that after we picked up the trash and put it in this 20-yard dumpster that Recology so generously donated, that there were dumpster divers going through it. And I'm like, wait a minute, this is garbage. And they continue to go through it and pull things out that we had just put in. So I sent an email to staff, and I just wanted to share it with the entire council and the public that might be listening. We need an ordinance that prohibits dumpster diving. We also, I would suggest that we look into ways to somehow lock bins that are 20 yards or less. 20 yards is only about 4 feet tall. Anybody can reach into it. The 30-yard dumpsters are about my height, a lot harder to get into. Don't know that it's as much of a concern. But I think we need to do something. Somebody I know saw these people, not some folks, I won't say these people, some folks bringing full bags of trash down, and they built what is essentially a castle down on the peninsula behind or below the Centennial Plaza. And there were literally thousands of pieces of garbage. Much of it was already bagged. And we picked it up and brought it back up the hill. So, you know, I think the blight and things that were talked about a minute ago, this might be a way to help combat that.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy.
Randy, just real quick, Flower Festival, is there a decision on that for the 6th?
So we're waiting. Obviously, the river's up. Right now, if it does not go any higher, we're a go. But if it comes up much further than it is, it will flood enough of the park. It will be a safety concern. So we should have that answer no later than noon on Thursday.
Okay.
So make sure everybody.
Mr. Murphy, I believe there already is an ordinance for the dumpsters, and they are required to have a lid and a locking device on them. And there is, when they're in a permanent location, they are required to have a fixed lockable enclosure around them. So it sounds like when we have a unique situation like your extreme generosity and willing to help, I think that we need to appoint security until that dumpster is removed. And we'll look into that, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Diane Brown and then Celia Hirschman.
Hi, thank you for allowing me to speak. My name's Diane Brown. I have two things I want to talk about. Lack of available thank you, Janet. The lack of available restrooms in the community, and I know why. I've talked to Wade about it. They're getting vandalized, so they're locked up. For a long, long time, those of us who work at Centennial, keeping it nice and clean and spruced up, when we're working there, we have nowhere to go to the bathroom unless we go down to Rotary. And I've thought it would be worth trying portable restrooms in some of these locations because it would take the pressure off the parks crew for the cleaning of the restrooms and the vandalism that's happening. Wade told me that one restroom had a sink broken, and then next thing they knew, the door was bashed in, and then they replaced the door and they replaced the sink, and then it was all over again, and somebody was camping down here in Bedrock's restroom, so it's all locked up. So that's my solution, is just to try some portable restrooms that people can't sleep in, that they can't vandalize, and they'd have a service come through and clean them and set them up at each park. I'd love to have some at Centennial since we work up there. And I was out with Randy and the crew cleaning, and I on the weekend, and there was no place for any of us to go to the bathroom, so I was down at Mugshots buying something to drink so I could go to the bathroom. So that's one thing. Also, I want to support these two women. We've known each other since trying to save the trees down at the cemetery. I know how passionate they are, how much they care about the community, and I don't think anybody can speak for Janet's feeling of racism unless they're in her shoes, or sexism if you're not in the shoes of the women that are involved. I think you can't speak to that if you're a white male. You just can't. We're learning that in the country. Different people have different perspectives, and one of the reasons to have these women on committees is because they are women and they have a different perspective. So I'd like to support the two women that we're talking about and hope that they get back on committees. Thank you.
Thank you.
Celia Hirschman and then Lisa Torres.
Thank you. I have a question, a point of information before I begin. Is there a lawsuit currently? about this issue about committees? Because you mentioned that you're doing an investigation, and you implied you can't discuss it because there was a pending issue. Is there a lawsuit?
I didn't imply that I couldn't discuss it. I said that it can complicate an investigation if there is discussion going on about it. Whenever we receive a complaint,
sure,
there is an investigation.
But is there a lawsuit?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, thank you. I want to speak to the fact, first of all, that as it regards to fluoride is a horrible chemical. You definitely don't want it. When I went to health coaching school, year-long certification course, they gave us a whole chapter on it. It's just something you don't need. You can do the research. She did a fabulous job. The question I was going to ask George is, if Chico's not doing it, did they have to go to the CPUC? Because you went to the Board of Supervisors. So that's a very valid question. That's all I was trying to get you guys to ask. As it relates to these two ladies, I find that you've all been elected here for a really important responsibility, and that is to serve the community. If there's a problem, you should speak about it. To fire people from their jobs without explanation in front of the public, I find offensive. I know that you're better than that, and I want to know why. And I hope there will come a point, since there isn't litigation, that you can speak freely about it. This is your community. No one should get fired without the respect of an explanation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Lisa Torres and then Kevin Thompson.
Good evening, Chuck Mayor Reynolds. Also, City Council. Please. I would like to speak on behalf of also these two ladies. I've known Janet for a very long time, and I've also known Linda as we were going through the voting process when she was voted in, and I admire these two women. When Janet was elected the vice mayor, she stepped up. She came to every city council meeting. She did what she had to do. She was tedious in her work. She hasn't stopped since she was elected. She has hit the ground running and still hasn't stopped, regardless of all the negativity that has come about of these two women. They have kept pushing for Oroville to be a greater place, and I just thank God for that, because they did not let nothing get in their way. They are looking to what the voters have voted them for, which is to keep Oroville in mind, to go forward, to do what they were supposed to do, which is bring integrity to the city council and bring respect for Oroville. I believe, and on my behalf, I know as a voter, I'm very proud of my vote, that I voted for you, and I just thank God, because you ladies have stood up, and the things that are going on, it is so nonsense, because this is a committee that was for the people of Oroville. We voted people to be in this committee because we know that you guys would do a good job to come together and make Oroville your priority, not this nonsense that's going on between committee members, because this is the vote of the people, and the people have put their trust in this committee to make Oroville great. Let's not lose focus on what's truly the matter is, which is Oroville. All this other petty stuff can be talked about or whatever, but Oroville is what really counts and what really matters. And I just thank God, I know you'll do a great job. You haven't come in easy, but you know what? It'll all work out. Let's just continue to pray and make Oroville great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Kevin Thompson and then Bill Spear.
Thank you. I don't have a prepared statement, but certainly I do honor this time and this space, Mr. Mayor and Vice Mayor and committee. I just, first of all, I just want to let you know I love and respect each and every one of you, and I mean that from my heart. Certainly, I'm not threatened or intimidated in any way, any fashion. I feel very confident in what I have to say and who I'm saying it to, and I just simply rose today to say just how excited my life has been to know these two women, all of you, but the most beautiful ones that's sitting up there right now. We're just thankful. And we just want to let you know today we tip our hat to you, just how hard you work in our community, all that you've done. I thank God that you were here on the Spillway incident, Miss Janet. You're the one that I seen on the freeway picking up people that had started walking to Chico. We got a phone call. You warned us that we couldn't get back in, and others. And we just want to say we will never forget. You know, we were fearful, we were scared, we didn't know what to expect, but you stepped up as a true leader and a soldier. And I want to say also to Linda Draper, we all started and we met at Save Oroville Trees. And I just want to say that you have always been an honest and upstanding, just the most beautiful person that anyone could ever have the pleasure of knowing. What's going on, you know, this is not my profession. It's just my hope and prayer that things will get ironed out. We will humble ourselves, and we'll just be respectful one to another and respect our constituents, those that put us here, put you here. We put you there for a reason, and we just want to say thank you. And I just want to once again just say I appreciate this forum and this space to get up and say these words. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bill Spear and then Carol Anderson.
Mr. Mayor, City Council, you know, a person's gender or the pigment of their skin has nothing to do with their ability to speak on any issue. And, you know, the name calling's pretty ridiculous. And, you know, we need to come together. It's the integrity of the person. And, you know, we're not living in the 60s anymore. And we are one city, and we need to work together without the name calling and without being divisive. And Mr. Mayor, I have full confidence in you and the people that put you in office that you are a man of integrity, and apologize that you have to go through all this. And at this time, I think we should start every city council meeting with a benediction, just, you know, back to the roots of our foundation. But I would like to pray. So Father God, we pray for a spirit of unity upon our city, that not division in left and right, or black or white, or male or female, that we would look at the integrity of the person. And there are people of integrity in this city, and we lift them up, Lord, from our council members and our mayor and all the public servants that rush in when everyone else runs out, the ones that we call when things are going wrong. We thank you for all the people that care for our city, that pick up the garbage, and even though they string it back out, that they continue to pick it up. And we thank you for the rescue mission. It helps those people that no one else wants to help. It's our problem. You've given it to us. And help us to arise to meet the problem, and not to be bickering and fighting over stupid stuff, getting sidetracked around stuff, that stay focused on your plans and your purposes. We declare your kingdom come, your will be done in Oroville as it is in heaven. In Jesus' name, amen.
Carol Anderson, and then Frank Johnson, and that will be our last speaker.
Good evening. I was happy to hear a couple of people mention the importance of Oroville, because that's why we're here. I love this community. I love what it has to offer, and I want it to be better. Also work at Centennial, and in addition to the need for restrooms, we need a drinking fountain. There's been a drinking fountain that has not worked there since I can remember. And basically having clean water available to drink seems like a very basic human right. I'd like to see that. Also, we just moved the homeless from one space to another. We need to find a space where they can camp away from our parks and rivers and be safe, and have a locked space that they can feel safe and not lose their stuff. I want to support the women on the council, not because they're women, but because the city people elected them. They are representatives of the city, and people who voted for them did not expect to have them stripped of all of their ability to contribute. And I know how hard both of them have worked over the last few years. And finally, if you read the actual data from real legitimate organizations on fluoride, it's perfectly safe. Chico does not add fluoride because they have enough fluoride in their water already. Fluoride is regulated. It's added to places where there's not enough, and it is removed from places where there is too much. If you look at World Health Organization's Center for Disease Control, American Medical Association, any legitimate, reputable organization. They list fluoridation as one of the top 10 medical achievements of the last dozen decades. So it's easy to find weird conspiracy sites that have all kinds of strange ideas. If fluoridosis was such a problem, you would know somebody that was suffering from it. And you don't probably, unless you have people with speckled teeth, and that just means their teeth are stronger. It's not a problem. Thank you.
Frank Johnson is our last speaker for public comment.
Good evening, Mayor and City Councilors. I am Frank Johnson, and I've been here in Oroville over 30-something years. And when I first moved here, I heard about how beautiful Southside was. And now I see that Southside is not beautiful as I have heard about it. Got people coming in, buying these houses, and keeping them up, houses tearing down, close to the school, central school. And when I was a little child, we were playing hide and go seek, and I got stuck in a fridge. And right there by Central School, it is a fridge with the freezer department, its door standing open. And we as a city, and y'all as city councilor, if you got the money, get somebody out there, get this place cleaned up. I live on Greenville Street, and as I go down Greenville, back in the day when I first moved there and bought my house, cars used to be there. Now it's couches, tires. Sometimes you go down the hill and had to hit your brake because somebody done left the tire in the middle of the road and everything. So we need to get our city cleaned up and together. I'm tired of going by looking at the same thing every day. Remember, if this was your area, what will you do? Where will you be? Will you get something done? Since it ain't your area, I don't think you're worrying about it. But I'm asking, please, let's get it cleaned up.
Mr. Johnson, I'm not sure if you were addressing me directly, sir, but the whole town is my area. I've lived here all my life, and I'm worried about every part of it. And through policy and procedure, we are working on cleaning up all corners of the town. So we're working on it. I've been here a couple of months, and we've made just amazing gains. So you might not see it on your street yet, but you will. And when it comes through, you will recognize it, and it will be sustained, sir. We won't be back doing it again next year. Thank you. Madam Clerk, is that it?
Mr. Mayor, that was the last speaker for public comment.
Thank you. Public hearings, we have none. Moving on to the consent calendar. Is there anyone who wishes to pull anything from the consent calendar? Looking for a motion to accept the consent calendar.
I move that we approve the consent calendar as written.
Second.
Moving on to regular business. Item 5, YMC proposal to lease the municipal auditorium.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. What you have before you tonight is just a request to assign the negotiation of the potential use of the municipal auditorium to the YMCA. The YMCA has approached the city twice now and asked for a potential lease of the building. Staff has briefly discussed that with them. We have not committed to anything. We have not included anyone else or precluded anyone else. YMCA was just first to come and ask, and we need to get direction from the council whether you would like us to continue those negotiations with the YMCA or not negotiate with the YMCA, or send it to the executive committee to negotiate a potential contract with the YMCA to bring back to the council for consideration of approval. So we're just looking for direction on what the council would like us to do. The YMCA is proposing potential programs at the municipal, which would include men's basketball, which I know is an important issue in this community. There's a lot of people that like to be involved in that. I know a friend of mine, Ronnie Phelps, had a traveling basketball team, and Ronnie was looking for a place to put on a tournament and was interested in the municipal auditorium a couple years ago, and unfortunately wasn't in a state to be utilized at that time. So it's an integral part of our community, something that needs to be utilized. It will benefit the downtown, I believe, by bringing people downtown. The programming will be good for the area. It's good for the building. It's there'll be somebody in there, somebody being a good steward of it, watching over it. Not saying that the YMCA is the only one, just saying they're the ones that have approached. So we're just looking for direction at this point.
Thank you. Councilmember Pittman's in the queue.
Quick question. The building, the facility as it's owned by the city, what kind of use rate has it had over the last year?
Very little, maybe less than 20 days.
Aside from
the utilization by the Hope Center as the donation hub and distribution hub for the campfire.
So no organized use that actually was an income producer for the city to balance the books over the cost of operating that building?
No, it's I can think of maybe 5 events that have been in there, and those have been all community type events, SPCA, pancake breakfast, things like that. Nothing really substantial.
So would it be proper to characterize the building as a huge debt to the city versus an asset?
As it currently exists, as we're currently using it, yes.
Thank you.
Councilmember Goodson.
Chief, it's my understanding that years prior to that a similar agreement was entered into with Feather River
Correct.
Parks District, and so I have heard that this is one of the reasons why the municipal now is in such disrepair, that the city and the Feather River did not work collaboratively in the maintenance of that. What is going to change with this incoming proposition? Number 2, I would like to ask in regards to a maximum of 6 days will be determined at the start of the fiscal year in regards to the city being able to use this facility. So my question is, I know that, and you had just stated there's several entities that request the rental of that municipal. One of them is Pastor Steve Terry. What is going to happen? Have we made other concessions in regards to Thanksgiving or the Christmas dinner? And also, could you speak to, it's the Chinese New Year as well?
Sure. All of those events you could negotiate into the contract should you choose to negotiate that contract. Nothing is set. I mean, that list of things that were potentially given was just the first overture of, hey, these are what we're interested in. You know, we've indicated back that, you know, we do not speak on behalf of the council. We'll deliver it to the council, but then we will probably negotiate.
This is fluid, and
absolutely,
it could be.
You're not locked into anything.
Specified.
Yes,
All
ma'am.
right. Can you answer what happened to the initial agreement with Feather River?
I was not there for the entire 25 years, or I was here, but I was not paying attention. My understanding is that the municipal auditorium was returned in extremely poor condition. The maintenance was not done, is what I was told. I know when we did move back into the municipal auditorium, it was in very poor condition. Mm-hmm. Now, that's not to say that the management that exists with Feather River Parks today would approach it from the same perspective in which the past management has. I know the management there now, and they won't address it that way. I just know there is that, for lack of a better term, bad history that exists. And that's going to be difficult for a part of this council. By no stretch of the imagination are we trying to preclude them or anything else. This was the Y that came and did this. The Y has a very significant issue with they've exceeded the capacity of their building now and their programming. So they're looking for potential places to expand. Feather River Parks, you know, they are a good partner to us. I believe in the city. I believe that we have baggage between both agencies that, you know, we can work out. We know each other, not just from work, but as individuals. So I think we can work through these issues.
I think what you're looking for is direction, whether to move forward or not with entertaining this idea.
Correct.
Right? Okay. Councilmember Smith's in a queue.
Yeah, I just wanted to state that I think you mentioned legacy events would be taken into consideration given that we move forward with this. I'm totally in favor of exploring utilizing our assets and turning them into revenue generators versus what they're doing now. And additionally, I hear from constituents kind of the complaint, there's not a lot of stuff for kids to do, and that's kind of the business of the why. And so it just seems to make a whole lot of sense to say, give you a yes, a thumbs up, move forward and negotiate for the city and for our community to utilize that asset. You know, given we're considering these legacy events like the Hmong New Year's, and there's others that are in there as well. But that being said, go for it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Councilmember Pittman.
Yeah, I could speak to a lot about the rental in the past, but we don't have 10 hours here to talk about it, frankly. And I think that's the past. And we take a lesson learned and move forward. I think that we're looking at an organization that has over 100 years history in this city. They're not going away. They're expanding opportunities, and I have a strong feeling the challenge of that organization to utilize that facility to its highest and best needs and capacities. I think it's a great example as there's someone interested in providing facilities that building can handle. I look at other similar examples as the golf course. Table Mountain Golf Club runs it. The golf people run that place. The state theater stage is operating that. Those are theater people. I see the YMCA as a good partnership in the future. I look forward to any agreement, and I would support the movement forward to not just get rid of a debt for us, but probably see an organization thrive and expand their programs in it. I think that's a good fit. I know they're busting at the seams over here at the facility, and they need more room. So I see it as a good win-win for both organizations, if it can be worked out.
Councilmember Goodson.
Oh, I concur, absolutely. I think this is a win-win as well, and I say move forward.
Vice Mayor Thompson.
Out of curiosity, in case I'm in favor of this as well, I think it'd be perfect fit if, you know, obviously terms with the contract meet everybody's satisfaction. Just a side question in regards to this topic and regarding the code enforcement using the offices on that one part. If perhaps things were thriving up there, is there another spot that we could potentially move code so that
Absolutely. What right now at the police department, you have approved a remodeling of dispatch, which the dispatch center is moving from the downstairs area to upstairs of unutilized space. That will leave offices downstairs that are going to be available, and we can move them into the public safety building.
Because, you know, it'd be good if they were there to have as well, not just, you know, a big gymnasium room with bathrooms, but
correct. We will actually, we'll leave them there until such time as whoever occupies it needs that space, and then we will move.
Understand. Thanks.
Councilmember Hatley.
Thank you. During the negotiations, are you, because we don't want to get into another thing like we kind of have at the State Theater, I personally don't think that's a win-win for the city because we spend a lot of money on that facility and right now subsidizing it. So, and I realize it's still a city thing, but I don't want to get into another contract like that where we're doing all the repairs, all the major repairs and everything, and you know, and end up, because I was here and I do remember the problems we had before when we had it leased out, and the other half couldn't come up with the money, and then it got to a point where we couldn't come up with all of the money, and so that's why the place went in such disrepair. And when they did try to have an event there, they had the commercial refrigerator was in the kitchen. They had brought in a residential refrigerator, which is illegal. You can't do that, and was running that thing in there, trying to lease it out, and it was filthy. And And so, you know, I'm a little gun shy, be real honest with you, and I want to see what kind of terms that you negotiate, and then I'll make a decision on whether to go from there. But this is in no way saying, I'll say, you know, go ahead and check it out. But by no way am I telling you go ahead and cut a deal with them right now and come back with a paper saying sign this, because I won't do it. But until I look at it and really study it, because I don't want to get in a mess like we had.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
So the question, Mr. Mayor, is do you, is the council's pleasure for staff to negotiate this, or would you like to refer this to the executive committee to meet with representatives of the YMCA to potentially work out a contract? That's a decision for the council.
I think that at least part of this council, I know that I would like to be inclusive in some of the negotiations of the stipulations. I would like to be aware of it before we go ahead and move forward with an agreement. So we would like some input for that. So you're saying that we have a committee that is...
You have an executive committee that's made up of members of the council that could potentially meet with those 3 members of the council. Would not be a publicly noticed meeting. The 3 members are not authorized to enter into a contract or make any sort of binding agreement. That agreement would then in turn, if one was reached with the YMCA, would have to come back to the full council for the full council to give their authorization and consent to that council, to that agreement.
Personally, I would recommend that.
The benefit of that for staff is it doesn't, we have 3 council people that are, should be looking out for what all of the council wants in a contract, as opposed to me just trying to, well, I know Councilman Hatley would like to have this, and Councilman Goodson would like to have this, and Councilman Draper would like to have that. It's more, it involves our council more in what we're doing. I mean, we can do it if you like, but it can go the other direction as well.
Thank you. Are there any public speakers on this, Madam Clerk?
I have a question.
Mr. Mayor, I do have 2 speakers.
Okay, well, I have 2 council members in the queue. Councilmember Draper, please.
Well, I was just going to add that it might be advisable to have some kind of monitoring of the premises during a lease period, because I noticed it's for 5-year units up to 25 years. And so it might help us to avoid a situation like in the past.
I think annual would be smart to we go over.
Some kind of monitoring.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Councilmember Goodson.
I'm sorry that I just wanted to know, did we agree on executive committee, and who is on that committee?
Could you tell me?
Can you tell us offhand, please, Jackie?
I don't have it with me. It's in the minutes in there.
The executive committee is currently made up of Mayor Reynolds, Councilman Pittman, and Councilman Smith.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, your 2 public speakers, we have Randy Murphy and then Pastor Steve Terry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council. Only have 2 minutes, or I get 3?
2.
Okay. Feather River Rec and Park District is very interested and always has remained interested in the Muni. We did not realize it was available to rent. I recall when I was city administrator, we put out the State Theater to an RFP to solicit interest and recommendations. I suggest to this council, before we get too much further down the road on this issue, that be part of the process. I do not object to wise use. We didn't know it was available. We have made interest or queries in the past about the availability of the facility for basketball and other things. We could not come to a reasonable conclusion about a fair amount to where we could offer a reasonably priced event or league for our participants. And consequently, we've not pursued it. But until I saw a Facebook post by our YMCA director about 2 weeks ago that they were refinishing the floor in there, I didn't even know that was going on. So I urged the council to pump the brakes a bit, direct staff to solicit other interest, see what you might get. Maybe we can work out an agreement where we mow the lawn of Bedrock and get a discount at the meeting. I mean, I don't know. There's a lot of possible things that we could do to work cooperatively. We definitely have an interest. Thank you.
Pastor Steve Terry.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. Listen, I certainly have no objections to YMCA doing this, but just a little history. A few years back, when we looked at an ice rink going in, we almost lost the Christmas dinner, and the mission was not considered. We have a history of running this facility every December 24th for probably about the last, I know 20 years that I've been at the mission. And there was a brief time there when there was an issue that caused about 2 years of us being elsewhere. This is the only facility that has a size that can accommodate. This last year, because of the campfire, the city of Oroville Fire came together with the mission, and we held the dinner at Oroville Fire Department. And it was a great alternative. It was not so easy for the firefighters, and considering that it was an extremely rainy day, it was not real easy for those attending. And I can tell you that due to that fact, we had an awful lot of food left over. We had food for 1,500. We had about 650 because people did not want to stand outside in the heavy rain. If you're going to do this, please remember the mission. Every December 24th, we do a Christmas dinner. We need that building. We need the size of that building and the facilities of it. We can do Thanksgiving at El Medeo or even Southside. Christmas dinner is too big for that. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we're looking for a motion to forward this item to the executive committee to negotiate for council approval.
So, can I?
Go ahead, comment.
I'm very curious. Can someone give an answer to Mr. Murphy in regards to his request for an RFP to be opened up to other nonprofit entities?
I would defer to our legal counsel. I don't believe that we have to. You can make that decision if you choose.
It's permissible to solicit different interest from different groups if you desire that to happen, but it is not a requirement for leasing.
Thank you.
Well, it would certainly make it where people couldn't say there were favorites if we put out an RFP for other nonprofits.
Bill, how did we arrive at this being on the agenda and moving forward with the YMCA?
The YMCA has approached the city a couple times and presented the city with an offer with terms of a potential contract.
Okay. And I know that as far as the floors and we approved that right here at this council. It's been on this agenda a few times. And a lot of these citizens were present. I personally, I have nothing in this, so I'm looking for a motion.
I'm, there's times that, to be quite honest, Well, it's good to be honest, right?
All the time.
I have nothing but good things to say about what I've seen from the YMCA in our community. What they've done, what this man in particular has done with that program since he's been there has been very impressive. So I'll put that out there first. I also think it's fair to the community that when an opportunity is open, that we are fair to everyone at the table. So in that heart or desire, I think it's important that we do, especially if there's a second entity who's also done a very good job in the community, to put it out to an RFP and see what's best for the community, not just an entity that I, support for the community, but to see what's best for the community as a whole. So I think it's fair to put out for the RFP. That's my desire.
I understand that. We're talking about kind of an apple and an orange here when we're talking about two different entities. We're talking about one that is tax funded and supported by the community. We're talking about one that's community donation driven. There's a significant difference there. And if you go out to RFP, are you really on a level playing field? Or is there a significant advantage one way or the other would be my question, which would make me wonder.
Or is it possible that something could come into agreement where there is a cooperation between both entities? Is that, does it have to be either or can there be mixed use, with both entities making full use for the community and for their people that they have there? So I think there's options at the table, but I'm not a leasing agent. That's our lawyer's responsibility, but I just think there's options, and I think it's important to be fair is my main thing.
Councilmember Goodson's in the queue.
And that's why I wanted to open this up for a discussion. As people that know me, when one boat floats, we all get to float. We are up here. People understand that we must weigh in with transparency. We recently had an item on the agenda where we're still getting comments from the public in regards to favoritism, bias. Things were not done, standard operating procedures. I would venture to say that we don't want to put ourselves in that position again. I believe that for an RFP, everyone has the same points of specificity and preference points, regardless of the organization. So with that being said, I would like to see it opened up. Or as Vice Mayor Scott Thompson said, some type of an agreement between those entities that do want to put their name in the hat.
I personally have not witnessed this council be involved in anything that didn't follow policy and procedure. Councilmember Pittman.
Yeah, my suggestion is to have the executive committee respond to the YA's letter, explore that, and then have the executive committee come back with a suggestion to council for the next step to be done, whether it's an RFP, whether it's, as someone mentioned, a merging of two agencies and combined efforts, whatever the case may be. But put this off to the executive committee so that all these details can be openly discussed in an open fashion and not here at the council meeting, and then have that executive committee bring back a suggestion to the full body.
We could certainly do that. We could also ask that those that are interested at this time send us something.
Yeah, exactly.
Send us a letter of interest or something so that we can bring all of that so the executive committee has something to consider and then decide if you want an RF or how you want to go from there.
Right.
If that's what you'd like to do.
I think it'd be best for the executive committee, whoever that may be, to work out the numbers, talk about it, bring forward the proposals or, whatever the case may be, and then work forward from that.
Councilmember Smith.
You ever sell real estate, you always like a backup offer. So and you know what, this is a great conversation because now we're talking about utilizing assets. What a great conversation. That being said, I'd like to make a motion that this get forwarded onto the executive committee, and that to negotiate the contract, but not be limited to the YMCA, and that other contracts be considered.
I'll
We still
second
have
that.
members in the queue.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Vice Mayor Thompson.
Thank you. So just to be clear with those who are going to put their name in the hat, you know, because as you mentioned, we have one that's got a bunch of money and one that's community funded through donations. For me, just so that the both entities know, for me, as long as the building is being taken care of, and like Councilman Smith said, there's a proper utilization of the facility and there's a benefit to the community, I personally am not looking for this to make a buck off this. I would like the building to be taken care of, properly maintained, you know, to be not just be taken care of, to be utilized for a benefit of the community. So I don't need to necessarily look at apples and oranges and say, well, this guy's going to offer me this much money and this guy can't, you know, or whatever. Is the building going to be taken care of? Are we going to have funds to take care of it? You know, is it going to be used, and will it be a benefit to the community? Are my three things.
Again, I don't have a dog in this fight at all, but just sitting here thinking, how many facilities does Feather River Parks and Rec have at their availability, and how many facilities does YMCA have at their ability to use, at their disposal? And again, apples and oranges. We have a entity that is being funded largely by us, and then we have a group that is self-funded through donations. I don't see what that looks like on an application process. I mean, I don't see how that is competition. It looks pretty one-sided. So, looking for a motion from somebody.
Mr. Mayor, we have a motion on the table that's been seconded that is to forward this to the executive committee, but to allow other application or other contracts as well.
Okay. We have a motion on the table. Vote, please. Councilmember Hatley, please vote.
Motion carries.
Item number 6, selection of the 2019 Samuel J. Norris Award for Excellence recipient.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. This item was put onto the agenda after being advertised on our Facebook page and city website. It's for the annual Samuel J. Norris Award. It's for a citizen who's contributed greatly to the city of Oroville, shown great dedication to the city of Oroville, and has selflessly and tirelessly served the community. What we're looking for today is we're going to have a vote. It's going to be a secret ballot. The winner will be announced at the the April 18th State of the City address, and the winner will be given the award at that meeting. We have 2 applicants for that that were submitted, or nominees actually. They're not applicants, they didn't submit their own. We have Lori Souza and Oroville Bud Tracy that are the 2 that are there. So what I'm going to do is just hand out these ballots. Once you're done with it, if you please just pass it to your left, fold it in half, pass it to your left. We'll hand them to the clerk. She'll tally them real quickly, and she'll let you know that we do have a winner. But in order to add suspense and surprise, we're not going to tell you who it is.
Thank you.
Oh, really big ballots. Wow.
Right? I'm going to open Arts up and look at it.
Chief, does Bud Tracy live here? He lives at Chico's.
Yes.
He's a half and half. He's a half and half.
Half stars down.
We do have a winner.
Thank you.
Thank you, council.
Moving on to item number 7, citizen appointments to the Southside Oroville Community Center Advisory Committee.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. This is an appointment to members for the Citizen Oversight Committee for the South Oroville Community Center. This is, we solicited this for applications for this on Facebook and also on the city website. We received several. There are 3 categories in which individuals can be appointed to the board. One is a citizen at large. One is a representative of a community-based organization. The other is a South Oroville resident. We had multiple applications that came in. Everyone met the criterion for a community member at large. We had one applicant that met the criterion for a community-based organization, and unfortunately we had no applicants that lived in the South Oroville area. So what we're looking for tonight is appointments for the citizen at large and the also the community-based organization, and then direction to put this back out and solicit more applications of members of the Southside community and see if we can get some folks from that area to put in application for the Oversight Board.
Thank you. My appointment for the citizen at large will be Jason McClure. My appointment for the public entity represented will be Randy Murphy. And we have no other applicants that are qualified. So we will be looking at this again in approximately 30 days. Moving on to item number 8, appointment of 2 members to the Oroville Dam Citizens Advisory Commission.
Can I have one moment, please, Mr. Mayor? I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, I was just reviewing the agenda real quick. The map is included so that individuals can look at the map and see what is the area that's been identified that we need members from that live, of the community that live within that dark blue area to make applications so that that appointment can be made at a later date.
Thank you. Excuse me. Would you like to speak on item number 8?
Yes, Mr. Mayor and Council, good evening. This is the Oroville Dam Citizens Advisory Commission that is made up of several different individuals from throughout the state. It's through the Board of Natural Resources, I'm sorry. And what we're looking for is 2 members from the council to be appointed to that. They will be providing oversight to the not only the maintenance but the construction and the activities at the the dam, the spillway, and that they will be on the board. They do not have necessarily regulatory authority. They're there for oversight and to report back any shortcomings that may be occurring or what a good job they are doing. It could go either direction. So what we're looking for tonight is just 2 members to be appointed at the request of the Natural Resources Agency.
Thank you. My appointments for this committee will be myself and David Pittman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Moving on to reports, discussions, and correspondence. Do we have any council announcements or reports? I'll go first. I went to BCAG and Air Quality Advisory Committee meetings, and everything was, it seemed to be business as usual. It was my first meeting, but it was ran very well, and I was impressed with the atmosphere. So looking forward to serving on those committees. Reporting from SCORE, we moving forward with a refurbishment plan, and it's possibly turning into an expansion. We actually have legislators that are personally involved with expanding our plant for us, so we can move forward with development. And I personally would like to say something to the citizens and to this council. When addressing this council or each other, I would recommend that we don't use gender or race. We are simply council members and citizens, and that's the way that we should address each other. Otherwise, things can get a little discombobulated, I would say. So it would be my recommendation that we are council members, which is the way I address everyone here, and we are citizens, but we are all servants of the community. Every one of us. Doesn't matter if you're up here or in the audience. So I would like you to remember that. Thank you. Councilmember Draper.
I was just going to report that I attended the Southside Cleanup Committee meeting a couple of weeks ago, and on March 26th I attended a point-in-time training, and they're doing it differently this year, where you have an app on your phone when you interview a homeless individual, and you can enter the information in very quickly that way. It used to be done on paper, and so this is something that's really expedites the survey process. And then March 28th, I participated in the point-in-time survey for several hours with my husband, Kirk, and it was really an eye-opening experience. I'll tell you that. Talking with those individuals about how they became homeless and extenuating circumstances that they're dealing with is truly heartbreaking. One woman, I've called three people today to try to figure out what can be done for this individual. She's having a double mastectomy in a couple of weeks, and then she has nowhere to go because she's living around town. And so there's lots of different situations that these people are dealing with, and it really gives you some perspective about that when you talk with them individually. Thank you.
We're going down the line.
Councilmember Pittman.
Oh, I want to back up the mayor's comments about the SCORE meeting. There is a plan in place to actually improve capacities. A new pump station is being planned and been authorized to move forward, so it's a good thing. The hard thing is you'll see some rate increases coming forward, which are necessary evils to tend to a few things there, but and we're hopeful to see some capacity improvements come along the way, so that's in progress. The other thing I want to mention, I also serve on the member of Rotary here in Oroville, and sometimes you don't realize, but the Rotary here in Oroville is a participant in a global grant with Rotary International, and this Rotary is part of a grant team that 2 weeks ago had a team in Liberia actually producing fresh water wells, and the report was given last Thursday of the team, our team that was there, and we're making a considerable difference in that particular country, and it's all through the efforts of your donations to the local Rotary Club and how that funding went down to the people of Liberia and the villagers there. Clean water is a big deal, It's a huge deal, and I think sometimes I need to report that out because I'm their liaison to that group, and I spent a month in Liberia a few years ago. So it's just us in Oroville making a difference in other parts of the world that sometimes we don't talk about, but we need to know about. So thank you all.
Thank you. Councilmember Goodson.
I attended a monthly, it's a NAACP meeting, and I'm also a commissioner on the Juvenile Justice and Detention Board. And as a part of our job, it is to make inspections of all the police departments in Butte County. We also inspect juvenile facility. And I'm mentioning this because we get an opportunity at the end of our inspection to meet with different youth in the various pods, and we get to have a marvelous dinner that has been prepared from the Boys and Girls Club. But it's an opportunity to talk to our young people on a one-to-one. And it's different when you're able to interact with these youth once they've been incarcerated. The macho is no longer there. And so you meet them where they're at. And I wanted to bring this up because many of the conversations that I have with these children, because they are children, is I wish I had listened. I wish I had chosen better associates if I had it to do all over again. And so I'm saying this because there's a lot of parents out here. You have children. You have foster youth that you take care of, and you have grandkids. So I know that we all come from a generation where our parents instilled in us good morals and values, and that's why we're all here in this room, to see that our city improves, to see that our youth get their needs met, that our community is healthy. So I just applaud each one of you. It's a very difficult job to be a parent and a grandparent. So if I can say anything, hold those boundaries so that your kids will be successful and productive in life.
Thank you. Councilmember Hatley.
Thank you. I attended the Park Avenue, they call it Payne, Neighborhood Watch meeting last Thursday night. And they brought up a question that I guess they're having some problems in that area with drones. Some of the neighbors around there have been flying drones, and they wanted me to bring it to the attention of the city and maybe get something from the city attorney that what we need to do. Apparently they're flying them close to their houses and in the backyards, and they have cameras on them, and so they just kind of wanted to know if the city, if we needed an ordinance, or if there was anything in the rules that we already have that about drones and flying in people's backyards, and these are people of my generation, so they're not happy about somebody flying in their backyard with a camera watching them, back there. So I told them I would bring it to the attention of the city at this meeting and see if we could get some information from our attorney or staff or whoever might know. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, City Council Member Mr. Hatley. So predominantly, you could have a municipal code. I'd have to check and see. I'm not familiar with whether there's a drone municipal code section here. Without that, there are your normal civil trespass type of remedies, but those are not. Those are private party entity actions that they would be needing to take. So that requires that you identify, who's committing the trespass, and you go through the whole process. But we'll check into the state of the municipal code, or just to see whether there's an ordinance that deals with this.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank
And
you.
can I contact you directly about my results? Yeah. Or would council like us to just?
I'd like to know,
Okay.
yeah. It's
We'll bring it up.
very
We'll bring it
interesting.
back to everybody and just advise you as to the status of the code. Yeah.
I think there is an agency that deals with those drones. It's called Remington.
Department is 12 gauge, I think, Remington 12 gauge.
Councilmember Smith.
I as well attended the point in time count, and to echo Councilwoman Draper's sentiments, you know, it is a complex issue, homelessness, and it does take engagement by all of us in the community to have compassion for those that find themselves in that situation. For 14 years, I ran a ministry down in the Bay Area, feeding and clothing the homeless. And I'll tell you, now coming kind of back in and participating in the count, it's tough. It's tougher. It's a more difficult situation. And you know, you get that perspective when you step away for a season and then you come back in, and just having that opportunity to listen and to hear and to take inventory. So I know it's a situation that touches, I think, everyone in this room. And it's something that I think that in the months to come we're going to address as a council on some level. Moving forward with something a little bit more positive is tourism, and we heard from Mr. Murphy earlier about Feather River Parks District. We have the Flower Festival supposed to happen on the 6th. I understand we have possibly a atmospheric river situation setting up, of all things. But so just monitor Feather River Parks District's website, right? And that they can know if it's going to happen Thursday by noon. And then if it does happen, there's going to be bus tours, $10 a ticket. And that also includes the pass that you need through the Fish and Game for $10, right? To do the flower tour at the Table Mountain. That's all on board. So check the website, Feather River Parks District website, Thursday by noon, to find out if that's in fact going to happen. Hopefully it does, but certainly safety of the river and all things considered. But that's all for me. Thank you.
Thank you, council members. Moving on to future agenda items.
Sure, yeah. Well, with the, I'm like considering whether I should bring it up now, or I think it is going to be dealt with at some point, but we started a beautiful come on, help me out, renovation of the municipal auditorium with the fish in the front. Who's on the Arts Commission? Anyway, if that could be continued, you know, because we have this beautiful blue and this old brown, if there could just be a continuation of, I've talked to, I believe, Brushstrokes, was it Tim? Ted, thank you, who did that, and you know, the desire to continue that on. It just needs us to see that move forward. But you know, it's a beautiful building we have downtown, and it's just, it needs some exterior TLC.
What is it that you'd like on the agenda, sir?
On the agenda, I would like us to maybe discuss moving forward with the fascia upgrades to see it match. It'd be great to have it matched by the Salmon Festival, so it's not this blue and this brown that's just clashing. But maybe it only bugs me.
Just sort of putting it on the radar for pretty it up.
All right. We'll bring back a staff report to pretty it up.
Administration reports?
I have nothing at this time, Mr. Mayor, but I would like to advise you that we do have 2 commenters on the PG&E notice of rate increase.
Okay. Mr. Attorney?
I'd like to report my microphone doesn't turn on and off easy enough. No, nothing further though, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Mr. Lehman?
Gary Lehman, Community Development. A few things. Last Thursday, Planning Commission did approve the new Chipotle restaurant to go in pad 2 at the old Walmart site, Feather River Crossing. This will be the very first drive-through Chipotle ever. So City of Oroville is going to be a poster child on that. In addition, we have some subdivisions that's going through, more housing, a lot of housing coming in, permits being issued. The final of some of the buildings, the mattress factories coming in. KFC has got new owners on the project. They are moving forward. We'll be getting their permits here within the next couple weeks to be moving forward with the KFC. So we have a bit of building and that going on within the city.
Thank you. Mike? Correspondence?
Mr. Mayor, we have 2 speakers, Susan Fox and then Rashid, and I'm going to butcher the last name, so.
How's everybody doing? Good. We're actually going to make our presentation together. Maybe that'll save some time, right? My name is Rashid Sadiq, and this is
I'm Suzanne Fox.
And we are here as bodies of consultants, helping with local businesses here to help rebuild after this devastating campfire. This rate increase by PG&E, I think, is an egregious act to the people here who have lost it, mostly everything. Some even lost their lives, right? So we also are here representing local business. We're trying to help them to rebuild, provide jobs, provide opportunities. Some are even trying to just keep their doors open. And so we are here to kind of advocate and hopefully give notice to you guys here, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and other city council members. Bring this to your attention, because we know if we bring it to your attention, hopefully you will make amends to some of this egregious acts that are going on in your county, in your city. We passed out letters that Dylan Fan, I'm actually honoring him today. I'm wearing his hat.
We're on a timer.
Okay, we're on the timer. Sorry. Okay. Can we combine our time? No. Only one time. Okay. So we passed out their information and letters to you to kind of to the Senator Nielsen, who's over this district, and also I've also provided a proposal that we submitted. Go ahead, Suzanne. Suzanne's coming.
The time's going, so to get to the chase, we're concerned about Odin Metals, which is an unlicensed facility.
I would have to, I'm going to stop you right there, Ms. Fox.
we're
This is regarding, Ms. Fox,
not being
this is regarding the PG&E rate increase, not where you're headed at now. If you could stick to the PG&E rate increase, please.
We believe that it's tied to the same project.
is-
They caused the Paradise Fire, and you're asking for rate increases, and that cause of the rate increase is what happened on the Ridge, and now you're having Cal Recycle issue billions of dollars to a corporation that's unlicensed, not permitted, popping up in your city.
The letter
that's
that was on our
unchecked.
agenda today specifically was about rate increases. It was not to do with anything that you're mentioning.
It's true, but this is related.
If you would like to come back on the 16th and speak on non-agenda items, you certainly are
Thank you
welcome.
so much.
We would love to, and I apologize if we offended, but this
No,
is
you're not.
an act that is hurting everybody. All right.
Thank you. And that adjourns our meeting. Next meeting will be on Tuesday, April 16th, 2019 at 5:30 p.m.
Oh, that was an interesting end. That was an interesting end.
Yeah. I didn't quite get all the connections. Yeah.